do you want to argue about the King of the Hill reboot for a minute, and then we can jump into Futurama? So like, there's this crazy rumor going around: King of the Hill potentially getting a revival,
Right.
set 15 years later. I guess this rumor's been around for a while. I actually saw it a few years ago, but there's now new rumors that they're in hot negotiations for a new
Whatever the
King
hell
of the
that
Hill
means.
sequel. Yeah, the negotiations, they were there before, but now they're hot.
They're hot, yeah.
Yeah. Tariq, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about a King of the Hill revival?
Man, I don't know, because I definitely trust the crew behind King of the Hill. King of the Hill is like one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. There's only a select few shows or movies that, like, when I watch them, I get frustrated by how good they are, and King of the Hill is one of those things. But I feel like I kind of don't want it. I like it where it is. I like the show where it is.
It does have a good ending.
It does. And that's not to say that they'll mess it up, because as much as there's a probability that it could be bad, there's a probability that it could be really good. I just I don't know if it's like nostalgia or what, but I kind of miss when things would just kind of stop, and that would be the last time you saw them. And King of the Hill isn't one of those things where it's like, but they didn't finish. It did. King of the Hill is older than me. It started like, I want to say like 4 months before I was born. And the fact that like it lasted until I pretty much got to high school, it's like, I think it's like, I think it's all right. I think they're doing all right.
It does have a good ending, and I can't really argue with you there. Like, if I'm satisfied with the end of King of the Hill. If there were no more King of the Hill ever, there would be no reason for me to ever complain. I'm not like sitting here like, bring it back, we need it. But that being said, it does feel like a show that like the climate of discourse could use these days, in my opinion, because it's a show that really did a good job like balancing its takes and presenting multiple perspectives without like demeaning those perspectives, and without punching down. It, like, I mean, obviously there's a lot of, I mean, there are definitely some things that they make fun of outright, but so much of that show is like about Hank Hill being presented with ideas that scare him and coming around on them in some way. And that is not a thing you see anymore.
Right.
At
Absolutely.
all. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Probably it's on the more nuanced side of adult animation, right? Because even like the progressive ones, right? They always are kind of they pick a side, and that's not to say King of the Hill doesn't pick a side of like what the team deems as like morally wrong or morally right. But I think what's special about King of the Hill is that like it tries to paint things way more nuanced.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see a function for that, definitely. I don't know. Every time I think about just that aspect of the show, I think about like American Dad, right? Because that's kind of what American Dad was at first, until they just kind of did whatever they wanted. But at first, it was kind of just like an overly cartoony King of the Hill. Like Stan was, like aggressively patriotic, and he had great pride in America, much like Hank did. And they would use Stan, much like they would use Hank, to kind of satirize different ideas or whatever. But they didn't. American Dad never approached it like King of the Hill did. They kind of made you fall in love with this family and Hank and everybody first, so you can understand where they're coming from, where they when they're trying to piece together what the right thing to do is, I guess.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a good show. I think, who knows? Maybe a reboot would be bad, but I think if they did it right, might be just what we need. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
But we're not here to talk about King of the Hill today. We're here to talk about Futurama. This is the Cartoons That Curse podcast. We will talk about King of the Hill, all 13 seasons, and maybe the revival when that happens. But this is the Cartoons That Curse podcast. We talk about our favorite adult animated cartoons season by season. We're doing Futurama season 3 today. You know what? Let's just cue the theme song. We have a theme song.
We do. I'll keep forgetting that, but it does exist.
I've been watching them for years, it's always been something that fit with all the animated characters that's doing their own bits. With a fry who's in the future and a family guy that sucks. With a father from a hill, a burger family runs a month. The show inspires is the same guy, except he totally say and diverse.
Let's watch Cartoons That Curse.
Yeah, that's bananas.
That's rough.
All right, Futurama season 3. Let's talk about it. I'm just gonna come right off the bat and say this. I think this is the best season of Futurama. I don't know if that's a hot take. I think this has got the best set of episodes of any season of Futurama. It does have the advantage of having the most episodes of any season of Futurama, but this is my favorite one. How do you feel in general about season 3, Tariq?
I liked it. I went into it with that mindset of, because you would keep saying like, yo, it's the best one, it's the best one. So I'm like, all right, cool, bet. So I went into it with that. And the cool thing about watching the show in order like this is you get to see where a lot of your favorite ones landed. And this made me realize that season 3 definitely has some of my all-time favorites, but I also realized that I think most of my all-time favorites are in season 4, because we hadn't even got to them yet.
Season 4 is really good. I can't argue that season 4 isn't great. Also, I guess you just said something important for our viewers. If you're following along at home, we're watching in production order, not broadcast order. So look it up on Wikipedia. If you're watching on Hulu, it's all out of whack. There are some episodes in season 3 that are actually in season 5 broadcast season. It was stupid.
This is the worst one. In terms of that, this is the worst one, because
no doubt
we'll get to it, but certain characters make their first appearance in different orders. So the first time you see them in broadcast order doesn't make sense. Like, I don't know. It's weird. It's rough. I messaged you. I was like, why is there an episode from season 3 and season 5? I was so mad.
So stupid, man. I don't know why Fox does that. I mean, they did stretch it out. So like they gave it an extra broadcast season when it was only 4 production seasons, and they really just mixed it around. But, you know, I just wish they would keep it with production order. But the first one for this season is actually generally, I've seen this be considered for a long time as one of the series' best episodes, Amazon Women in the Mood, which is the episode where basically Fry, Bender, Kif, and Zap are imprisoned on a planet of massive Amazonian women. I think that the people's opinion that this is one of the best episodes of Futurama is very much an opinion that should stay in the early 2000s.
Because is that kind of hyperbolizing it? It's a good episode, but
I also think it's I don't know. This stuff, the kind of stuff this episode talks about, which is very much a like man versus woman type of comedy, it feels so tired now. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like, I think at the time, it was it felt a little bit more biting and fun, but like, I don't know, all these years later, I think there's a lot of really funny stuff in this episode, but so much of that, like, men are like this, women are like this humor just feels exhausting to me. I'm just kind of tired of it.
I get that.
I get that. That being said, there's some really funny stuff. Like Zap Brannigan is just one of the worst people ever in this episode, as usual. You get a lot of good Kif and Amy chemistry, and like kind of their first real date after the Flight to Remember episode, which kind of hinted at that stuff. You get some really funny, just like Leela being fed up with Zap's BS. I always like that. I always like that brand of Leela when she's just like, shut up, Zap. How do you feel about this episode?
I think it's one of the ones that I definitely remember a lot from seeing a lot when I was a kid. There's a lot of, the one thing I noticed about this one is that there's a lot of like really great like character acting bits. So like the character acting on Zap when he's doing the karaoke is like really hilarious. And I wrote down the stuff with when they I think they when they showed them the guys that like they're dead and the pelvic bones are smashed and shit, and Zap and Fry have like the wildest like facial takes. Like the timing is insane.
It's basically like, that's the part where they're frowning and then smiling like in intervals, right? They're like horrified and then very happy and then horrified and then very happy.
And the timing is off, so like they don't switch their faces at the same time. It's funny. I like it a lot.
That is a really good visual gag. I like that bit a lot.
The robot, man, what was her name? The
Femcuter?
Yeah. So I don't know, man. I was watching it and I was just trying to be funny. I wrote B. Arthur with like 3 question marks. And then it was B. Arthur. And I was really like, wait. B. Arthur. Yeah. I wasn't expecting it to be B. Arthur. But
it's an incredible voice performance too.
Yeah. In college, I watched a lot of Golden Girls. So
yeah.
I guess I just kind of got that voice stuck in my head.
Golden Girls rules. Golden Girls a good show.
Golden Girls rocks. We should make an exception for the Golden Girls.
We'll cover Golden Girls after we cover a few cartoons.
Yeah, then we have to do the Golden Palace.
I don't know that. What is that?
I think that's what it's called. The Golden Palace is the Golden Girls spinoff where B. Arthur isn't there, but Rose and them, they like run a hotel for old people or something like that. I don't know. I've never seen it. I just know it exists.
We should only cover. We're going to only cover the Golden Palace. We're going to skip all of Golden Girls. This podcast is now Cartoons That Curse and the Golden Palace. It's going to be really great. I hope you guys like bad spinoffs of good shows.
I can't wait to talk about the animation inconsistencies on Blanche. It's going to be really good.
Man, it looks too realistic.
Yeah.
Amazon Women in the Mood, though, is pretty... I mean, like, I do... Like, the Amazonian women are pretty funny, even though, like, too much of the humor is just, like... I don't know. Too much of it feels like I said earlier, it's like, here's the difference between men and women, and let's, like... And even though the point of the episode is, like, that the men are getting chastised for their, like, rude and incorrect and ignorant takes on women...
They're all clearly idiots.
Right, exactly. They're all clearly idiots. Yeah. It still just feels like, oh, it's a whole episode of this. You know what I mean? It's the whole thing. But it does still have some really fun sci-fi stuff and some really good jokes and some really good performances. Amazon Women in the Mood is a good one. It's a good one. But I think the second episode of the season, Parasites Lost, I love Parasites Lost. This
one rocks.
It's such a good episode. If you don't remember, this is the one where Fry eats a truck stop egg salad sandwich and gets parasitic worms that improve him in nearly every way. And so this has so many good things going for it because it is like both got a cool sci-fi premise, like a parasite improving you or a parasite taking over you. That's a cool sci-fi premise. It's also got the characters shrinking down and going inside someone's body. What's that based on? The something voyage, the Incredible Voyage or something? Fantastic Voyage.
Yeah, I think Fantastic. Yeah. Oh, am I tripping? No, I'm probably tripping.
I'm gonna look it up.
Incredible.
I think it might be Fantastic. Fantastic Voyage. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna say this is why we need like a podcast intern.
Yeah, looking these up for us. Yeah. Maybe once we have a bunch of viewers and a successful Patreon, we'll hire an intern. Right. Yeah.
See, you guys could be getting somebody a job.
That's right. I mean? You guys could help support people, help build our economy. All right.
Right. Yeah.
Times are tough.
Keep
let's
that
make
money
some
in
jobs.
rotation. You know what
I mean? This episode is so it's not only good on that sci-fi level, but it's just such a good Fry and Leela episode. And I think what I like best about this episode is that even though I totally understand, like, so Fry is starting to be improved by these parasites. He's like, and Leela is starting to take notice and is just like, holy crap, I like this Fry. This is the kind of Fry I would want to be with.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the end, he's worried that, she likes the parasites, not him. Right. But and while I understand that fear, I always saw this sort of as, I don't think the parasites brought anything new to the table. I think they were just optimizing Philip Fry. You know what I mean? They were like, they were optimizing him to his potential, which obviously he wasn't ready to reach anywhere near that yet. But I really like that idea because it doesn't make me feel like Fry got some like unearned, I mean, sure, it was unearned. It doesn't feel like he got a leg up because of something that happened to him. It feels like it was revealing something about Fry that we didn't know.
Right. And I think what's cool about it, I think what it says about him is that like he wanted to get there on his own. Without any help. It's not like he saw Leela as like a prize to win or anything like that, but it's more like, I want this to be as authentic as possible. Regardless of if these worms are bringing out my potential, I didn't organically get there. You know what I mean? So I think it's more of a character study on Fry in that respect. You know what I mean? And what it says about him and what he values. And yeah, this is like I like that. Part of me kind of feels like they should have opened the season with this because it kind of does. It's you get like a lot of Fry and Leela stuff in the first two, but this one is like the most aggressive one. You know what I mean? Like this is like aggressively, no, Fry wants to be with Leela. Yeah. And you know what I mean? And so yeah, I don't know. I really like this one, and I really like what it says about Fry. It is pretty funny. It is still a funny Futurama episode, but I think it says a lot about the character.
Totally. I think you're spot on about how it's definitely like an important thing to understand about Fry, that he even though he was there, he could have had Leela. He chose that he wanted to get there on his own. I think that's a really important point you made. And it says a lot about who Fry's opinion of himself and who he is as a person. He believes in himself enough to get there, even, enough to give up what he's got in order to do it what he considers the right way. He's got a code of honor. And so this is one of my favorite episodes of the show. It's just, I think this is just the show working on all cylinders. Also, like, I think there's so much comedy in them shrinking and going down into Fry. Like when they're in his ear, they go in his ear and the professor's like, be very quiet. Okay, professor. What? Just screams.
Yeah. That's one of the ones I wrote down.
There's so many good gags.
If the magician joke is my number one, that is definitely my number two. Like in the whole show. That joke is so funny.
It's so
good. I don't even remember where they were, but Bender says, "Where are we, the ass?" Like, no.
Yeah, they're like in a heart valve or something. Bender's like, what is this, the ass? It's so good. Yeah, and there's some weird. I also liked seeing like the Parasite Society was kind of cool. They built their own. Right. They built their own city. There was actually originally, apparently, they cut out some stuff from the script where, like, while Fry had the parasites, I think this was a good thing that they cut these out because it would have been a little much. But Fry was like eating silverware in an early version of the script because the parasites needed the materials to build their like society inside of him. And like, it doesn't need to go that sci-fi. They think they rightfully pushed that to the wayside and focused on just what they needed to for this episode. but there was some fun stuff in there, like them jazzercising his muscles, and that was some fun stuff.
Right. This is the holophoner. This is the first one.
That's right.
Too. Yeah.
That's right. Introduction of the holophoner, which really only makes 2 appearances over the course of the show.
I guess so. Yeah.
2 important ones. Yeah, it's like this one and then that original series finale. And I'm trying to think of any other times that they really used it. I know they used it in they did a like fake version in Simsorama. They had Lisa had like a saxophone holophoner for a bit there.
That does happen.
Yeah. There's also in the background of a shot in Disenchantment on a pile of treasure, a real holophoner looking thing. Yeah. They're just throwing Easter eggs in there. But yeah, Parasites Lost, so many cool sci-fi ideas. Holophoner in particular is such a cool idea. An instrument that like creates holograms. It's really cool.
Yeah. And I think the ending is brilliant. Like I really love how sweet the ending is of him just like silently just trying again because he wants to get there. He wants to get it on his own. Yeah. You know what I mean?
That last shot where the last shot where he creates a Leela while he's playing the holophoner and it just turns into the one eye and he just smiles while he's playing. It's a good shot. Such a good ending. Oh, love that episode. Although I laugh hysterically every time he comes back after he's gotten rid of the parasites and he's like, let me play for you one more time. And it's just Frankenstein going, rah, rah. So stupid. All right, let's move on to 303, A Tale of Two Santas. This is the second Robot Santa episode. And in this one, Bender replaces Robot Santa. And ironically, the voice of Robot Santa, who is John Goodman, replaced by John DiMaggio, Bender. Right. So there's kind of a little metatextual information there too. Bender replaces Robot Santa. John DiMaggio replaced John Goodman.
Damn, I didn't even do the science.
This is it's a sci-fi show, Tariq. You got to do the science.
Damn, I didn't do the science. Oh man. Damn, I gotta move this up on my rank now just because of that. Jesus
Christ. So one interesting thing that I learned about this episode is that apparently, because some angry parents wrote in about the last Christmas episode about how it portrayed Santa Claus to their children, the network didn't want them to make this episode. They made it anyways, and then the network said, we're not going to air this episode. And for a really long time, they decided not to air it. And they eventually decided to air it at like a later time slot, not close to Christmas at all. And I'm pretty sure, which is really weird. I mean, like, it's just Fox being weird.
I hate when stuff like that happens because, like, Futurama, like, okay, maybe if this was The Simpsons, it would still piss me off.
Right.
But you could at least get away with the fact that, I guess, like, they market Bart or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Futurama is about adults.
Exactly. It's an adult animated show. Yeah. I was wrong. They did air it close to Christmas, but I think they had to do it in a later time slot. And there was like, I think Bill Odenkirk wrote this, and he was saying that this was one that they were like taking out they were doing like panels, Futurama panels with like writers panels and stuff. And like they were showing fans it in person way before way after it had been made, way before it had been aired. If you look at the other episodes around it, Amazon, Women in the Mood, Parasites Lost, Luck of the Fryrish, Birdbot of Ice-Catraz all air early 2001, and this one airs December 2001. So they literally waited a whole year to put this out. Yeah, pretty weird. But this was one that I weirdly feel like I kind of moved this down in my mind's ranking for years. And I rewatched it this time. I was like, this is a really funny episode. There's a lot of funny stuff going on in this one. I think the Robot Santa stuff is funnier than I remember. I liked seeing the Neptunians, and like, I really like the song. I really like the song that the elves are singing.
Oh yeah.
About making toys really quickly and half-assedly. And then I also just like Bender trying to deliver toys and everyone like attacking him because they're afraid of Santa Claus. It's some good stuff in there. Yeah. Yeah. How do you feel about Tale of Two Santas?
I don't know. I'm kind of this I think is on my lower half because it's definitely funny. But it didn't like okay, when I think of Robot Santa, when I think of like the character, right? This isn't this is always for some reason wasn't the episode that came to mind. It was either the first one or I would even think about like Bender's Big Score. Like those are the two like standout appearances of the character for me. And this one like I barely remembered when I saw it. It definitely still has like funny moments. I really like when they get on the sled and it doesn't go anywhere. Fry just says faster, faster, like
it's so
like,
good.
And I like that I like Coolio as the Kwanzaa bot. And I like that he says he's been handing out the What the Hell is Kwanzaa book out for 647 years, which is really funny.
He's so sad about it. I've been handing this out for 647 years. It's so sad.
He references Hanukkah Zombie.
Yep.
This Hanukkah Zombie doesn't show up in this one, right?
No, this is the first time they ever said his name, but he appears for the first and I believe only time in Bender's Big Score.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Voiced by Mark Hamill, great voice actor, also known as Luke Skywalker. Pretty good performance there. Skips. All three of those guys, it's like, yeah, Skips. There you go. The Fire Lord, the Joker.
He's Principal Mark Hamill in Pepper Ann. Which I don't know why the hell they did that, really? By the way. It's so stupid.
Wait, is he named Principal Mark Hamill?
Yes, he's Mark Hamill in the Pepper Ann universe. And he becomes principal of their school. And he's just the principal of the school.
Bizarre. That is so weird. Yeah. Especially because he is like a world-class voice actor. You can get him to do any voice you want. That's really funny. Right. Wow. Yeah, like, so this one's definitely still like mid to low on my list as well, but it was like rewatching it. I was like, I think I didn't give this episode quite as enough credit. I think there's some really funny moments. Kwanzaa Bot's hilarious. I love them coming in to save Bender, and Zoidberg comes in and I'm his friend Jesus, and Zoidberg dressed as Jesus. That's pretty funny.
I wrote that down.
And also, I do think that I think that John DiMaggio does a really good job recreating the John Goodman's Robot Santa voice too. John Goodman only played him in the first one, and you like so many people I tell that are like, "What do you mean? Like that's not the same person playing him every time." It's a good performance for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to 304. Cool. Unless you got more to say about Tale of Two Santas. Okay, 304. Luck of the Fryrish. This is, in my opinion, this is a runner for best. This is in the running for best episode of the whole show. I love the Luck of the Fryrish. I think this episode is not only hilarious, but it's like the perfect blend of hilarious and tapping in to that really strong emotional core that like Futurama has been able to tap into for a handful of episodes that like super tug at the heartstrings, but also make you laugh. If you don't remember, this is the episode where Fry tries to track down his old 7-leaf clover, only to discover that was apparently stolen by his brother, along with his entire identity. At least that's what we're led to believe. Until the end, when we find out that Fry's brother named his nephew after him and gave him a 7-leaf clover to carry on his spirit. God, I fucking love this episode so much. It like I've seen it so many times and it gets me every single time. It's so good.
As a kid, this was the episode that sold me on Futurama. Like this was the one that made me go, "Oh, okay, this show is like totally different. Like this is I've never seen anything like this before." Because that's what I think about a lot is the situation that Fry is in, like a normal person would just kind of like that would be their first instinct is to think about everybody that they knew, and like that's probably like where you would think like the stories would go. It would be about him having to deal with coming to terms with everybody he knew just no longer exists, and they do a good job setting up that like he probably doesn't really care all too much, but like he would have to be heartless not to care a little. You know what I mean? He still had a life before that. And I really, really like when they explore that. And I think this was the first time they did that.
It's the first one. Yeah. In fact, we didn't know he had a brother until this episode.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And
yeah, they ultimately it's so good. They ultimately explore Fry's like family through flashback type of episodes 4 different times. 5 if you count Bender's Big Score, but it's kind of a different thing. But there's this one that's with his brother, Jurassic Bark about his dog, Cold Warriors about his dad, and Game of Tones about his mom. I think, but this one does such a good job, not only just being like, just like really centering Fry's sort of like sadness and longing and like the things he's missing about his past, but it also tells the story in such an effective way because we start off in a flashback. Our opening scene is back when Fry is born, and it establishes one thing really quickly, so it does a really good job like kind of leading the audience down this path, and that is that like Fry's brother Yancey is jealous of Fry. Like even from the moment he's born, he's like, I don't want to be named Yancey, I want to be named Philip, this name sucks. And so like everything they do leads you to believe like, oh yeah, it totally makes sense that he stole Fry's identity. He doesn't want to be Yancey, he took the clover, he wants to be successful with the clover, and it makes that little twist at the end that much more effective. It's just the slightest twist and you're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
God, so good.
And I think I really appreciate what the episode says though about, because you see the relationship, you see how like it's kind of just like, yeah, he's just really jealous and they don't really get along, but he misses him still. And Fry is angry because not only does he feel like everything was taken from him, but like they never actually had like the conversation of, hey, no, like I actually love you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's why Yancey kind of, when you the brief moments that we see him, he kind of defaults into regret. Like even his face when he sees the clover fall out of the record, like he is instant like, oh man, you know what I mean? Like he misses him and he wants to show that in the best way that he can. And I think it's brilliant. I like my favorite episodes of this season are the ones that like say a lot, that I really appreciate what they have to say. And
for sure,
this one says a lot, and I really appreciate it for that.
Yeah, honestly, going back to that moment where he found the clover and also Fry's drawing, I actually think it's even smarter the way they framed that, because knowing the twist, we know what his face means. But before you know the twist, all we know is that he potentially stole Fry's clover and stole his dream of being like the first astronaut. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so like when he steals this drawing, it's like, we know, oh yeah, it's because he misses his brother. He wants to keep this thing that his brother made, but it's also a drawing of Fry wanting to go to space. You know what I mean? So like on one hand, you could be like, oh, he's literally stealing his dream and he's stealing his clover. And it's like all of the things that we saw in the episode are slightly recontextualized thanks to that ending twist. And then they just brilliant. Punch you right in the gut. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's also got some like really dumb, funny humor, like the opening with the horse track where you find out like Fry's unlucky and he's like praying to horse god. The horse god, he's like, sometimes I doubt you even exist. and then Bender rigging the race leads to one of my favorite jokes in the whole show. He drugs all of the horses except the one he wants to win. And afterwards he goes, that'll teach those horses to take drugs. So funny. Such a good Bender line. Yeah, I don't like, for my money, there's I think there's only, in my opinion, I think there's maybe one episode that competes with this one for my favorite of the whole show, and that's how much I love Luck of the Fryrish. It's just like it never gets old. It does it for me every time. And yeah, obviously, like you said, it's like it's one of the ones you think about when you think about how good Futurama is. When I was watching as a kid, like what won me over, in the same way it won you over. It's like, oh yeah, the stuff like Luck of the Fryrish really draws you in.
Right.
You got any other thoughts on Luck of the Fryrish?
It's such a stupid joke, and I guess they had to live with it because they made it. But when they're like in New York, and then he's like, "Oh, my old house," and then they fade, and it's exactly the fucking same, and it's so nice inside. It's like, what? Why do you?
It's so funny. It's a funny joke though. It's just a good visual gag. I also like their breakdancing crew. Those guys are really funny.
Oh yeah, noticeably FAT. It's really good. I like that a lot.
And how they're stoked because they're going to win some Jam Master Jay parachute pants that are autographed. It's so funny.
I guess the last thing I'll say about it is that it might have if not my number one, it's definitely in like my top 5 favorite like bits of animated musical score when like just at the end where Fry like finds out like that Yancey named his son after him, just the music that's played in the back of that, like, is really beautiful. Like
it's don't you forget about me, and it's simultaneously really highlights the emotionality of that moment, and it's also a callback because Yancey grabs the Breakfast Club soundtrack to clear out his reception, and it's on that soundtrack. It's like it's really so good. Everything comes together so well.
Because that adds to it. Because that part where they play the record is really rad. But I'm talking about like the score, like the actual like the composed the stuff that's in the back right before that. I think is really, when he's really excellent. Yeah.
When he's looking back at the when he's holding the clover and looking back at the that is really good.
Yeah.
The Christopher Ting does all of the score for Futurama, and he's really good. There's so many good motifs in the show. Yeah. That's definitely one of his finest moments, I think. All right, 305, the Birdbot of Ice-Catraz. So we are at the second free waterfall episode. Remember, I told you about this last time with the poplars. This is Free Waterfall Senior is the guy who runs the penguin reserve. So this is our second look at the waterfall family. So if you're not familiar, this is the one where Leela joins an environmental protest group to protest Planet Express, basically taking a tanker of dark matter oil too close to Pluto's penguin reserves. And then Bender crashes, and the penguins start to multiply and they have to murder them. It's a pretty funny take on an environmental episode to twist it so that the environmental thing to do is to murder the animals. It's pretty messed up. This episode is pretty funny. There's some funny stuff in it. I really like Bender as captain. I think Bender being the captain of the Planet Express ship is very funny. Yeah. It's not one of my favorite episodes overall, but like all of these, there's really funny stuff. There's really funny stuff in all of them. One thing I did notice is that this is the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first actual appearance of the Thinglonger, because last time he was asking what if he invented the Thinglonger. So he definitely we know that he invented the Thinglonger, which is pretty good. How'd you feel about this one?
I think this one is all right. Like I do think it has some funny bits. But it's another one of those that I kind of forget when I think of just like the landscape of Futurama and the run. Yeah. This episode made me notice a theme that goes on throughout the whole show. But like, I guess it comes out a little aggressively in this one when Bender is like super suicidal throughout the entire run of the show. At least this run of episodes, like the entire Fox run. And I think he says, I think they give him community service or something. He says, like, can't you just give me the death penalty or something like that? Like,
yeah. I mean, that's like, that was the thing that they brought up in the first episode. We meet him in line for a suicide booth. Yeah.
It was rough.
It is interesting how I do like, you know, it does show how much Bender cares about his friendship with Fry. Like the moment Fry left, he just became a wreck. He started not drinking, which is a problem because he's a robot. He gets pretty self-destructive when he gets insecure about his, you know, certain things in his life. He gets insecure about looking cool, about his friendship with Fry, and about like being remembered. That's kind of those are kind of the three ongoing things that Bender is concerned with, which is interesting. And this does touch on that for sure. I think my favorite joke. Sorry, go ahead.
No, what'd you gonna say?
I was gonna say my favorite joke in this episode is when Bender's doing the community service, and the cops just go in for a hug.
Oh
and so
yeah,
they start hugging, and then Bender sneaks away, and then one of the cops is like, "I guess this is why Chief says no hugging." Like this is an ongoing problem. They're hugging on the job and letting people get away.
Those cops are bros, man. I love them.
They're so funny. I can't remember the names. I think one of his names Schmitty. I think that's the human. I don't remember what the robot's name is. Huh? Gotta look that up. You think you know everything about Futurama till you don't.
This is the intern's job, man. This is where he would get his little, you know what I mean? Get his little type on.
Oh man. Okay, so his name is Earl, but it's spelled URL.
Oh, that's so good.
A good robot name. It's pretty good.
That's really good. I like that a lot.
Yeah, me too.
This episode has a really funny visual where Leela puts a hood on and like closes it and the eye just kind of pokes out.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah. I like that too. I also like some of the jokes like from Free Waterfall Senior, just about like like how excited he is to kill all the penguins, even though his whole thing is like environmentalism.
Right.
And like at the end, he's almost convinced, like, maybe we shouldn't kill these penguins. And he goes, but we've already made so much penguin tempura batter. You know, like we have to kill all these penguins. It's pretty good. And then this is also the first time once Free Waterfall Senior dies, I believe killed by the penguins. We see Old Man Waterfall run up in the background and say, "I'll avenge you, son." And he will and he'll appear in the following season as in A Taste of Freedom, I believe is the episode he shows up in. So that's we got that to look forward to. We got more waterfalls.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah.
The saga continues, boy. I can't wait.
We should make a whole podcast about them called Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls. All right, let's move on.
I'm supposed to say that. I'm supposed to make that
joke. All right, 306, Bendless Love. This is the one where Bender starts working at a bending factory and falls in love with his coworker, Angeline. First Bender love story, I believe. Was there any other Bender love stories before this? I don't think so. Flight to Remember. Right. Of course.
That's why I wrote second Bender love story in my notes, and I was trying to remember what the first one was, and it's definitely that.
Yeah, you're right. Second Bender love story, with an interesting twist because she used to be married to Flexo, who also works with them at the bending factory. The second, and I believe last speaking appearance of Flexo. I think he showed up in the background sometimes later, but I don't know if he ever spoke after this. But it's funny. He's immediately back to doing his Flexo shtick where he's like angry. He's like, no, you're all right. Everything's fine. Yeah. It's like, it's just classic Flexo. Okay. I had one tiny nitpick as a Futurama fan with this episode. This is just like the tiniest, stupidest detail that I think could have been a good callback. And that is, we see Bender's assembly when he's born, right? So we see him being built and on the assembly line, and then they go over and he's at bending school. They like put the graduation camp on him, and it's literally just like a machine that teaches him how to bend. But I think it should have said Bending State University as a callback to Mars University when they said Bender from Bending State University.
Yeah, damn.
It doesn't take away anything from the joke, and it adds to with the callback.
Yeah, that would have been right.
You really blew it, Eric Horsted, writer of Bendless Love. Just kidding, if it's fine.
It's funny because your small nitpick is like kind of lore heavy, and mine is like animation. Because the fucking I've hated it for 10 years. I've hated it since I was a kid. When Bender smiles, it is the grossest thing I've ever seen in my life. I know it's a joke, but I hate it. I hate it so much.
Oh man. I do like how this episode begins with like Bender sleep bending. I think that's a funny idea. Especially with the reveal of like they reveal all of the things he's bent, and they subvert that so brilliantly with Zoidberg saying "my slinky," and it's just a perfectly straight piece of metal. It's so funny. It's such a good bit. It's so good. Overall, like, this isn't a crazy memorable episode for me. I do think there's some funny stuff in it. I noticed something this time that I never noticed before. that was kind of, I thought, wow, Futurama can do that. And that was in the background of a scene where Fry and the professor are walking down the street, and the professor's like staring up at the sky because he's bent backwards. In the background, you just see a drug deal. There's a guy, and it's the guy who they show at certain points who's like a crackhead, and he's like, there's one episode in like 300 Big Boys, where it's the first time you see him is like there's a vending machine for crack, and he's trying to put the money in, and the crack gets caught, and he's like, you can't get it. and so this is like, I think only the second time we've seen this guy, but they just decided, let's just show the crackhead buying some crack in the background of this shot. Yeah, it's so random. I can't believe I've never noticed. It's pretty funny. I
like the professor when he's bent. I like the professor when he's bent. When he says at the end where they're like, fix him, and he just kind of makes it all worse. And he's like, I'm sad now. It's like, oh.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm trying to remember what else. I mean, Bender just plays himself in this episode. That's what it's all about.
That's one thing I wrote. I wrote Bender self-sabotages his own relationship because of his insecurities.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I'm getting a lot out of this Futurama rewatch, and this is definitely something that you taught me, is that like Bender is relentlessly insecure, and you see it insanely throughout when you start to pay attention. Like, and this is a prime example of nothing was wrong. There was everything was no fine. One had a problem. Nobody was mad. Like, nothing was wrong, and then he just somehow got in his own head, and it blew up.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And, it's funny because I've thought of there's so many episodes where like he does get insecure. And this is one where it's so blatant. It's like so blatant that his insecurities just completely blow his happiness. Like, this is one where it's like, oh, his insecurity completely self-sabotages, like you said. And there's a lot of episodes where that showcases insecurity and talk about it a lot. But I feel like there's not that many where it's so cut and dry, where it's like he got jealous, he did something dumb because of it, and he lost out on his relationship. That's how it goes. Yeah. You got any other thoughts about Bendless Love?
I wrote, I guess this is the last thing. I wrote, he's a menace to every straight person in the company.
I wrote that down too. That's so fucking funny. It's like, really obviously good. It's because it's they're talking about bent, like literal bent characters. But that line is so funny. God, yeah, I love that we both wrote that down. That's so funny. All right, 307, The Day the Earth Stood Stupid. This is a classic. This is a good episode, and one that was kind of a story that they had like started planning from the beginning, with Fry being important to the, saving the universe in some way. And so this is the first episode with the giant brain spawn. Giant brains attack the Earth, make everyone stupid. The only one who isn't affected is Fry. This also reveals that Nibbler can talk. This is the first one that does that. Although they do it differently. It's weird because initially, and I think it's just for the jokes of that scene is the main reason they did it this way. They had him telepathically communicating with Leela, and then Leela's like repeating everything he says. And that made for some really funny jokes where she's like asking about the origins of the universe, and and then she's like, so every religion is wrong, which is a great joke, and only works if you can't hear Bender's response. But it's weird because then as soon as they get to the planet, they say that they're like making her see them speak, but then the rest of the show, Nibbler just talks normally. Like there's none of that other business. Not that it's that important ultimately, but it is a thing I noticed. How do you feel about this episode overall?
This episode rocks. This episode is really funny. I didn't so in the rewatch, this is why it's important to space these out, because on my first day, I got to this episode on my first day rewatching, and I was like, in the middle of it, I had kind of turned it off. And for some reason, I was like, why do I not? I remember liking this one. Why am I not liking it? It's because I had Futurama fatigue. I went back to it the next day, and it was really funny. So I was like, okay, I gotta take that into account. But no, this one is really good. It has one of my favorite visual moments where they're talking about Fry, and he's just kind of going at the pineapple, and he just kind of gives up. He gets wall-eyed and looks somewhere else. I love it so funny.
I love, there's so much good humor with everyone being stupid on Earth too. There's so many good moments there. Like I love Fry yelling into the wrong side of the bullhorn, telling everyone to stop being so stupid is funny. But one of my favorite comedic moments in this episode is Fry taking the note Leela gave to him, throwing it in the fire, and then Leela goes to grab it and goes, "Oh, fire hot!" The prophecy will help. And he tries to grab it out and goes, "Fire indeed hot." So it's so funny because like we're so used to the professor's mannerisms being pretty smart. Like he's dumb in certain ways, but he's like a smart character. So like it's funny to see characters we love being this stupid. It's like it's a performance you'll never get out of them again, It's like that kind of performance.
This episode has like it has two really great Fry lines. It has when it's saying that the Earth is next, he says, "I hate to be those guys." It's like, all right.
So good.
And it has which I think it's funny, but I think it's only funny if you think about it too much. Just when he shows up and like the brain is like in the library, and Fry's like, "I'm here to kick your ass." I don't know why that makes me laugh every time I hear it, but it's the delivery, and it's a brain.
He even points it out. He says, "We've evolved past the need for asses." It's like, there's no ass to kick, Fry. I also like that how stupid it is that like Leela like she flips over the one of the shelves and blocks the door. Like I don't think that is helping anybody. I don't think that's helping anyone in this situation. And then going through the books was really fun. Like going through all the classic literature, they go to like Huck Finn and Moby Dick. But the solution is really good. I love that Fry's writes his own story that they consume and causes them to leave Earth.
For no reason.
Yeah, for no reason. It's such a good joke. It's like what does he say? It's like a contrived story full of plot holes and spelling errors or something like that. Yeah, it's so good. And then also it's like a nice little Fry and Leela moment, because he writes that Fry dies, and like you see Leela mourn his loss, and that's like part of the story that he's written. But it's also like really Leela. I guess she's dumb Leela, but still, she's mourning the loss of Fry. Yeah. I like this one a lot, and I like, they only did 2 Brain Spawn episodes, and it felt like after the second one there should have been more. I was always really surprised that they didn't come back to it in the revival seasons or in the movies at all. But I like that they did this ongoing thing with the Brain Spawn, and it seems like David Cohen had this sort of plan, because I think this one was story by David Cohen and Jeff Westbrook, and then the script is written by Jeff Westbrook. So I think this is one of the things that David and Matt came up with ahead of time in terms of like what's an ongoing story that we can touch on over the course of the whole show. It's one of the reasons they threw Bender's shadow into the pilot episode, like knowing that would tie to this later. And there are certain aspects of it, like we'll get into a few episodes, Roswell That Ends Well, and how that episode ties into why Fry is not affected by the brain spawn. But I think that was something that was like kind of a retroactive addition. But it's cool to see ideas that they had planned from the get-go come to fruition through the show, and in some of the best episodes of the show too.
Right. Is this the first Hypnotoad, or am I tripping?
Was it in this one?
Because this is the one with the sheep, which is funny as fuck. Like all of that
That's
stuff is
right.
hilarious.
This is the first Hypnotoad. This is the introduction of the Hypnotoad. Yes, at the pet show, which is such a good joke. So funny.
It's really funny.
God, I mean, like I like all of the Hypnotoad's appearances, but I do think this is the best one
because they go the extra mile with all of the jokes. Like they keep going. Like he hypnotizes the sheep, and then he to the point where the sheep closes the damn gate on his own.
And then the judges are like, I don't know how do we judge this? And then he just turns and hypnotizes them, and they all give him a 10. It's so good. And then even just the way he's declared the victor, goes, the winner is the Hypnotoad. And then everyone in the audience is like clapping in unison, like, oh, glory to the Hypnotoad. It's so good. Oh man, classic, absolute classic. Gotta love the Hypnotoad. Everybody loves Hypnotoad, as they say.
For sure. Absolutely.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on to 308. That's Lobstertainment, which is, I know, an episode you quite like a lot.
Yeah, I love this one.
This is the episode where Zoidberg makes a movie with his uncle, Harold Zoid, who is a very obvious parallel to Harold Lloyd. Yeah, why don't you start us off? You love this episode. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I love this one. I loved it a lot as a kid. I always love when cartoons do like old Hollywood stuff. So this one was really cool to see. Just even because like obviously it takes place 1,000 years in the future, but I love how they kind of play with the idea of history repeating itself, because they're watching his old films.
Yeah.
And they look like old films, but they're in a really futuristic way, and like it's really smart, and I really appreciate it. It has a lot of really funny quotables. I think I've actually said in conversation, come here and give your uncle a nice warm meal. Like it's just a lot. There's a lot of really great stuff like that. And it's really sincere too. Like even regardless of all of the like the old Hollywood stuff, like it is a sincere thing with Zoidberg trying to protect some of the only family he has left, right? And he just kind of wants to help, and he wants him to not feel like him. Like Zoidberg would rather not somebody else feel the way that he does, and he feels like his uncle is deserving of that praise. You know what I mean? And he gives it to him. and it works out, and I like that a lot about it. Yeah, I think this one's great.
This is definitely one that highlights that like Zoidberg is kind of the best person on the crew. Like Zoidberg, that's kind of a thing that they keep going with throughout the show. But like at the end of the day, even when his own safety was, was at risk, he had an opportunity to just make sure everything was okay. He was like, no, I'm going to make my uncle happy. I'm going to give him this award. I'm going to make him happy. And he did it at his own expense. And that feels very much, that's just like very Zoidberg. It's kind of quintessential Zoidberg. He's very pathetic, but he's very good hearted and good natured. I like a lot of the LA humor in this one. Being from LA, I know that's kind of boring, but it's there's a lot of fun like movie making humor in this. I love them making their movie. I love how bad of a movie it was going to be. I love how little sense the movie makes. Like it's what's it about? Harold Zoid is the president and his son Calculon the robot is his son and vice president. It's so stupid. None of it makes any sense. I love the way that like Calculon is completely overacting the whole time and Harold Zoid is just yelling at him to emote.
Yeah. Show a little emotion, will you?
Yeah.
I love the Hollywood stuff I love the Oscar stuff too. The Oscar stuff I like that. Number one, I like that there's 400 categories now in the Oscars apparently. And I like that Bender says, they're just doing a bunch of the technical awards. I think they're up to writing.
That's a good writing joke. And this is written by Patrick M. Verone, who was actually, I believe, president of the WGA at a certain point.
Oh wow!
So, president of the, not of the WGA, but of the like writers. I don't know if he's president of the WGA, but he was like the one who represented the writers when they're doing like the strikes. I was listening to a commentary a couple weeks ago. So like when they're doing the strikes, he's the one who's like communicating between about all of the, he's basically the one facilitating the negotiations for the WGA contracts for the entirety of the WGA. So it's a good writing joke from a guy who's a big part of Hollywood writing scene. Yeah. I also love, this is what I just remembered, but I love that in that category that Calculon was not really nominated for, but supposed to be nominated for, 2 actors were nominated for the movie Bikini Party Summer. That's such a dumb joke. Oh man. You have any last thoughts on That's Lobstertainment?
This is where we find out that apparently Zoidberg has 3 parents. So I'm not sure how that works.
Okay, so here's how I think it works, actually.
Okay.
Because we find out in Why Must I Be a Crustacean in Love that when they reproduce, they die. So I think Zoidberg's biological parents died in the mating ritual, and then this other person is whoever raised him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think they don't explicitly explain it, but that makes sense to me.
That does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. They don't go out of their way to explain it, but you can piece it together. You can figure it out. Yeah.
I am sold.
All right, let's go on to 309, the Cyber House rules. We're like halfway through here. We're doing pretty good. We're moving along. This is the longest season, so we're going to try to get through these. This is the one where Leela gets surgery to have a second eye installed and starts dating her childhood crush, Adelaide Atkins, played by Tom Kenny. Another Tom Kenny performance. Tom Kenny played Adelaide Atkins. He played the robot in that in the Fear of a Bot Planet in season 1, and he plays Yancey Fry. He plays Fry's brother. Tom Kenny playing a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, I guess when you think about it, that does sound like Tom Kenny.
Yeah, it's weird. He's got such a distinct voice that also like really blends into his characters sometimes.
Right,
you forget about it. Yeah. This is a pretty fun episode. I like Adelaide's gimmick of just being very pro averageness. That's such a weird gimmick to give a character. Where he's just like, his whole thing is just like, I want everything to be perfectly normal, not exceptional, and not bad, like just
right.
average, please. It's just like, it's just a funny weird gimmick to give someone. I think my favorite part about this episode though is the Bender orphan subplot. That's good stuff.
Yeah, man. Bender is really fun as a parent.
Yeah.
Like, he's really fun as a parent. I was almost like when the cops come in and they like take the kids away, like, I mean, it kind of brings you to reality because you're having so much fun with Bender and these kids. You're kind of like, oh, I guess he isn't taking good care of them, is he? Huh?
Yeah, this is dangerous. He shouldn't have those kids. This is bad.
I guess not.
But it does show another, like, more of that kind of thing we see with Bender, where like obviously it was just a grift to get money from the state for taking in these kids or whatever. But at the end of the day, when he has to give them back and they all miss him and they give him like that drawing that they did to remember him, and he like acts like he doesn't care, but then he opens it up and he uncrumples it and he sticks it on there. And it's because Bender cares about being remembered. He cares about leaving an impact. He cares about leaving some kind of legacy. So like any little hint of that, and he's like all about it. And it's like a nice, lovely, emotional moment, especially that they all go and tackle him at the end. That's cute. It was a good moment. Yeah.
I love that he
good
says every other day it's food. Like
every other day,
every other day it's food.
Yeah, he should not have those kids.
No.
How do you feel about the Adelaide Leela plot overall? This was a very much a one where it was like Fry being like, Leela, you're good enough as you are, and like Fry kind of showing his whole, all of his emotions towards Leela. Like he likes Leela, he thinks she's great the way she is. And being a little jealous that she's like dating someone else now after she's gotten this like surgery and whatnot.
Right.
But yeah, overall, like none of that stuff super stands out for me.
Likewise.
Yeah. I think it's like interesting from a Leela character standpoint, where it's like, she's always been this other. She's always not only not really known her family or where she's from, but she's also got this very blatant, obvious thing that makes her different than everyone else. And that's she's got one eye. So I do think it's kind of interesting to like see what Leela's like when she like removes that. But the truth is like, that's, Leela didn't need Leela's great how she is, kind of like how Fry said, Leela, regardless of if she has one eye or two, is still Leela. And so at the end of the day, that's, maybe she learned a little bit about herself, and that wasn't really an important thing. It's something that she felt insecure about, but hopefully it helped her overcome that insecurity.
For some reason, it kind of felt really heavy-handed the way this one kind of went about it. Like, it was really on the nose about how she was acting and how Fry felt. Like, everybody was kind of like on the extreme side. Like, Leela was on one extreme and Fry was on the other.
And Adelaide was average.
Right, yeah. Smooth average. He's still right on brand. But I appreciate what it says about Leela later on, like what they do when she sticks up for the little girl and saying like, "Oh, we should get this one." You know what I mean? Like, I appreciate that.
I love that moment. I forget about that. That is a great moment when she decides she wants. Yeah, that's kind of the breaking point. She decides she wants to adopt the kid with the third ear. And Adelaide is like, well, but there's normal ones. There's perfectly normal ones. And she's like, there's nothing wrong with this child. And he's like, well, we'll remove the ear. And it's like, it's that. But in a way, like, it's a good moment for Leela. But like you said, it is almost a little heavy-handed, where it's just like, she is spelling out the lesson. She's like, she's fine the way she is. And she's really talking about herself, So, but yeah, this is got some good stuff, but not one of my faves.
Right. And it does the opening is kind of sick. They deliver the card in an orphan basket.
I forgot
Which,
about that.
as a concept, and then is
Bender,
sick.
And then Bender crushes it, right?
Yes.
That was a lot.
I forgot what episode this was. So when he started stepping on the baby, like my jaw dropped. I was like, what is he doing?
Oh man, that is it's pretty out there. Pretty funny, but also damn.
Yeah.
It's pretty messed up. Okay, 310, Where the Buggalo Roam. This is the episode where the crew visits the Wong family ranch, and after the Buggalo are swept away by a windstorm, Kif goes try and rescue them. The rare Kif focused episode. We don't get that many of these. I guess the closest we came was Amazon Women in the Mood so far. Right. And we get a couple later. I think I like the aspects of this episode that focus on Kif coming out of his shell and being courageous and kind of, doing what he can for the person he loves. The native Martian stuff is pretty rough and does not hold up very well.
It's pretty rough. Oh shit.
It's pretty bad. And it's a bummer. Like, it feels like this show is, they have missteps here and there. The show was made, a lot of this stuff that we've watched already was written in the late 90s. I think this stuff that we're watching now is probably written between 99 and 2000.
2000, yeah.
It's 20 years ago. There's a lot of this stuff in TV back then, but it's still just like sticks out like a sore thumb when you go and watch it. Just like the poor treatment of the like Native American stereotypes, and like they literally just translated them over to these Martians. It's like it's obviously it's like not, it's very thinly veiled. It's just straight up Native American stereotypes. And then on top of that, though, they use these stereotypes and they make it so that these characters at the end of the day were like the solution is that they were too stupid to realize that they had been traded something valuable for their land, which is really rough of a solution. And I've come to expect better of Futurama. This one's a rough one for me.
Yeah, I didn't even put that last bit together, but yeah, that's rough. It's rough as hell.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of my perspective on the Fox Futurama is much like my perspective of the entire run of King of the Hill, where like the worst it gets is fine,
right?
And I think this is as fine as we've gotten so far.
Right.
I think this might be my least favorite so far, and it's weird because they start off when they go to Mars, and you kind of see the energy they're putting out, and you're like, oh, they're gonna do like a Western thing.
Right.
And they kind of do it, but then they kind of do their own thing after a while. They kind of don't pick up on tropes and stuff that I thought they would, and everything like that. And it's not particularly that funny. Like there's still some funny gags. I do like I wrote down like Hermes was gonna save the day with a bunch of question marks because he kind of stands up like he and then Kif says he was gonna do it and Hermes, okay, fuck it.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But yeah, this one is, I don't know.
Yeah, it's always been kind of low on my list because I don't think it's particularly funny either, but like especially rewatching and just seeing the Native American / Native Martian stuff, it was like, oh, this is like, not only is it lower on the comedy list, but this is like really rough from a from a perspective of how they portray some of these social issues. It does have a great Zap Brannigan line when he's brought in to save the day, and he says, "I am the man with no name, Zap Brannigan. Nice to meet you." It's good stuff. It's really funny. But yeah, this is I don't think this one holds up. This is pretty low for me.
All right, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's not talk about the bad ones. Let's go to 311, Insane in the Mainframe. Fry and Bender are sent to a robot insane asylum after kind of being unassuming accomplices to a bank robbery. written by Bill Odenkirk, one of my favorite Futurama writers. I really like this episode. I think this episode is underrated. I feel like this.
It's like,
it feels like it's not talked about.
Relentlessly funny. It's
exactly
so funny.
It's so good, and it's also, I think this is this the first like pre-show advertisement where they say Futurama is brought to you by. Is this the first time they do that?
Nah, there's a lot of that in season 2.
Oh, is there? I just forgot.
It's been 2 they all kind of start
2 weeks since we watched those.
Because remember, the first season has all of those cold opens. Like, it's just straight cold opens.
That's right.
And then the second season has a bunch of those. Futurama brought to you by. Like, that was their version of that. And now we just kind of don't get anything.
Yeah. Just the occasional Thompson teeth. And I believe we'll get molten boron later, unless we already got that one. Thompson's teeth, the only teeth strong enough to eat other teeth. Pretty funny. But this has always been one of my favorite episodes, and it's also been one that I just feel like people don't talk about that much. But as far as like comedic episodes go, this is by far one of my favorites. I think Roberto as a character is hilarious. Just a great concept for a character in like a crime robot. Obviously, Bender does a lot of crime, but his like just how insane he is so funny.
I laughed as soon as he spoke. Like the first time he spoke, I laughed.
It's so, hey, Red. It's so funny. My favorite Roberto line. Okay, I have a few. I think my favorite Roberto line in this episode is when Fry's on the stand and the what's it called? The judge gets a phone call. Yeah, the judge gets a phone call and he's like, I'm going to be killed if I testify. Oh, it's for you. So like, obviously everyone's dumb. And then as Fry grabs the phone, all you hear is Roberto say, and the other hamburger will also be made of your lungs. So he's in the middle of talking about making at least 2 hamburgers out of Fry's lungs. I think all of the stuff in the insane asylum is so funny.
So
like
good.
the idea of Fry being a human in there and them not allowing, like not recognizing that as a human is just a funny premise. But so many funny, insane robots. It's such a good idea. It's like, let's just make a bunch of crazy robots. Yeah.
I love we talked about it in the last episode, but Buddy from the car place, he's like, we've actually met before.
Yeah. What? Yeah, and he explodes. So good. And then I also like when they go to take him away from the, like it's time for him to leave, and he goes, wow, what a surprise. And there's just like a tiny explosion on his shoulder. I barely even exploded at all. It's such a good idea.
I like Roberto going, I gotta practice my stabbing.
I wrote that down. Stand back.
It's so funny. Like and the episode is just like that the whole time. Like, even if it's not jokes like that, the distress of Fry in the middle of the episode is insanely hilarious. Like when he they're eating, when they go to eat, first of all, it's all oil. Right. Yep. But then when they go to eat, everybody switch. And they just fucking
change places. Yeah. They have a Mad Hatter bot. It's a robot based on the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland. Change places. And like every other robot is perfectly in sync. They know it's time to change places. Even Bender, he's like fine with it. And Fry can't get it together. It's so funny. It's so good. I also like how this is another one that kind of has 3 distinct acts. The first act is the whole like getting in trouble and the court case thing and like being, and getting sentenced to the insane asylum. The second act is the insane asylum. The third act is Fry thinks he's a robot and he's trying to find his primary function. And that stuff is really funny too. Like the way he's going around trying to help everyone around the office. And I love the way that he keeps throwing things in the incinerator. He's like, no, you don't need that. He just throws it in the incinerator. I also noticed a joke that I don't think I've ever really caught before, which is that Fry at one point refers, while he's doing his weird robot speak, he refers to Leela as bossy meat creature, which is pretty funny name. But yeah, it's funny. This is just one of those episodes that's like there's not much from a story perspective to analyze.
No.
It's just a fucking funny episode. It's so funny.
That's really good. It says nothing about any of its characters. It doesn't say anything new about Bender, anything new about Fry, Leela, anything. It's just really funny. My other favorite line is he's got the munchies for freedom. It's so fucking funny.
Man, it's so funny. Yeah, like it's funny that they like it's, you know, honestly it's funny because like watching the show as a kid, I didn't really catch how often Hermes was just referring to weed, like weed terminology. Like when I was really young, it was like I caught one here or there, but it's like a lot of the stuff he says is somehow framed around weed terminology. It's pretty good. Right. Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's like especially something I noticed watching as I'm older. I also like this is so stupid. When he goes, pick a number between 1 and 10, and the Bender goes 56. He goes 56. That's all I can think about. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. Oh man, what a good episode. I'm glad we're in agreement that this is one of the funniest ones. Yeah, it's so good.
Really funny.
Super underrated. All right, let's move on to one that I don't think is as good. 312, The Route of All Evil. How do you feel about this one?
Which one is this one?
This is the one where Cupid and Dwight start a newspaper delivery service. Introduces us to Dwight. So you know, we get a Dwight introduction. First Dwight episode, I'm pretty sure.
This is the one that I was pissed off because it was in the 5th season.
Yeah.
Also, because of how this was aired, this is not the first appearance of Dwight.
Right.
It's supposed to be, and it makes sense as one. But the actual first appearance of Dwight is the second Anthology of Interest, where he doesn't say anything.
Oh, he's just one of the Munchkins. Just in the background?
Yeah, he's one of the Munchkins. Now, bro, I love
that's so weird. So he's in the back. So he's in the background of one of the Anthology of Interest, like anthology stories, and doesn't speak. And so at the time when people watch that episode, they would have no idea that that's a character they're supposed to know.
Right. And that's kind of the second time they introduced a character like that, because the first one is the first Scruffy.
Right. That's an Anthology of Interest, right?
Yeah.
In the first one when they introduced Scruffy. Yeah. That's funny. Okay. So this episode is about Cupid and Dwight starting a newspaper delivery service, competing with Planet Express, making a bunch of money and blowing it. I don't know what it is about this episode. I never have liked this episode that much. I think there's some funny stuff in it. I like Fry. Like some of the stuff with Fry, Leela, and Bender like brewing the beer is kind of funny. I like when Cupid says, or Dwight says, so one of them says that alcohol makes you dumb. And Fry goes, no, I'm doesn't, which is just stupid. I really like, there's a really funny joke when they're watching TV and it's Real World The Sun and they cut to it and everyone's just screaming.
It's so funny.
That's such a good joke. That's funny. And then
the best joke in episode.
Yeah, agreed. And then not only is that a good joke that like the Real World, The Sun, and everyone's screaming, but then Leela like adds to it by being like talking about the prices. Like there's no way you could afford an apartment on the Sun. Yeah. No, it's good.
That joke rocks.
But overall, I don't feel like I have that much to say. I guess they do a little bit of like kind of father-son bonding stuff with, you know, and then it's kind of interesting to see the professor and Hermes like as a duo in this episode because they're dealing with their kids together. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I don't have much to say.
So did they invent, this was something that was on my mind while watching this. Did they invent Dwight just to do this? Like,
I mean, it's maybe we've never seen him since. I mean, we never saw him before that. So like, it feels like this was definitely the first thing, yeah.
Because after Cupid is introduced in the second season, he kind of just disappears. And I feel like they might have invented Dwight so Qbert wouldn't disappear and he can have someone to talk to.
Right.
At least that's kind of what I was thinking about while watching it. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's like this is something that that Futurama does sometime, not often, but sometime, where they'll take like a standard sitcom plot and they'll try to futurize it, and that'll be what the joke is, right? The fact that they're futurizing it. It's like, oh, we're tired of our lazy sons, go get a paper route. But this is the futurized version of that, I guess, and it's something that they do every once in a while. I'm not gonna lie, most of the time it's my least favorite format for the show. And yeah, this kind of proves that. And also the beer stuff is fun at first, but it leads to absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all. It's just a completely separate storyline. It's completely separate. There's no connection to the rest of it.
It's so minuscule that I forgot. Like when the episode started and it started with the beer stuff, I was like, is this an episode of Futurama I've just never seen before?
Right.
But then when they started doing all the paper route stuff, I was like, oh, it's this one.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know, man. It's like this one is structured really weird and everything just kind of comes to like a halt and a dud at the end and kind of teaches a lesson that like, I don't think is Futurama's style, I guess.
I don't know. I agree. It does feel like very neatly wrapped up in a like, here's the lesson type of way, and that is not normally what they go for. So let's just move on. Let's move on from the route of all evil. Let's talk about Bendin in the Wind, which I think is another underrated episode personally.
Yeah, I like this one a lot.
It's a good one. So Bender is paralyzed, but he becomes the washboard player for Beck.
Which is funny
guest performance. In general. It's so funny. You know what I also like about this is, okay, so I was thinking about it this time. The inciting incident of Bender becoming paralyzed is so well integrated into the story because they have this thing and they find the car. They're going to open up the whale oil drum or whatever. But the thing about it is that we've seen Bender get stuck to that machine before. Like we saw it in I Second That Emotion. So there's that.
Right.
They also bring up the fact while that's happening is that because he got stuck on that, it was a magnet. And so Fry brings up like, oh yeah, it screws up your inhibition unit and makes you sing folk songs. And he's like, what do you mean I want to secretly be a folk singer? So like it's so naturally integrated into the story of what's happening and also brings up the thing that will be the crux of the episode of Bender being a folk singer again.
Yeah.
It's a really good way to open that story. This episode also introduced me to Beck when I was a kid, who is still one of my favorite musicians. I love Beck. He's really good.
Yeah, I think this was my intro to Beck too when I was a kid.
Yeah. I really only knew the songs that were in this episode or referred to in this episode. And then I started listening to his music. I downloaded a bunch of his albums and I still listen to Beck all the time. I think he's really good. Seen him live. He's really good.
Beck gives a super funny performance in this episode. Yes. He's really funny. He does the oh yeah. So stupid. It's just like his celebratory thing for Bender moving his new little arms. He's so funny, and not only does he give like a really good funny vocal performance, but he's so down to make fun of himself in this episode. And apparently I didn't listen to the commentary this time around, but I remember listening to the commentary previously, and the writers talking about how down he was to make fun of himself and how sometimes he like pitched his own jokes at his own expense, which is, I love that, it's great. But one of my favorite jokes is when Bender's really sad about all the broken robots and he goes and Beck's just giving him advice. And he's like, maybe you should write a song about it. Like when I wrote Devil's Haircut, I was feeling really, what's that song about? Which if you've ever heard the song, no idea what that song's about. Like very much like, what is that about?
But yeah, I love the way he's like just down to make fun of himself. It's really funny.
I love the Bectionary.
The Bectionary is funny. It's such a good idea. No made up words like Odelay. And the funny thing is that like Beck songs totally have weird non-words in them too. Like that's very Beck. I also love the line. Did I write it down? Yes. I love this line because it actually, I think, describes Beck really well. And it's just kind of how they jokingly introduced him when Bender says, I've always dreamed of being a musician poet who transcends genres even as he reinvents them. Which is just like so specific, but also like when I listen to Beck's discography, I'm like, man, there's like not two Beck albums that sound the same. Like everyone is different. And it's like he's so weird. He's got such poet vibes. And yeah, he really does just like change things up every time he goes to the recording studio, which is interesting. Another thing I noticed about this one is that it doesn't feel very future-y. This episode feels like it didn't need to take place in the future, which I kind of like. I mean, part of that's because they got the old Volkswagen van and it's like a road trip story. But yeah, the story could have been a Simpsons episode if they had done it a little differently. But it's a good one, man. I think there's so much funny stuff in this episode.
Is this so? We've talked about the vendetta that Futurama has against New Jersey for whatever reason. But when they're on the map, it says New Jersey.
You're right. I didn't think about that.
And I wrote it down because I'm like, is this the only time they do that? It might be.
I don't remember. I do remember pausing when I was younger and looking at all the states that they had added. My favorite one is that they
do it. It gets insane. It's like fucking. It's like an equation.
Yeah, my favorite is there's one that's like 24-bit Colorado. It's such a dumb joke. But I also love on the East Coast when they do there's West Virginia and East West Virginia. Like West Virginia's been split in two. Oh, it's so stupid. I gotta say one more on my favorite funny joke lines in this. And that's when after Bender is paralyzed and the doctor is like, I'm sorry, I'm afraid you'll have to get a new one. And the professor's like, all right, let's drag him out. And Fry says, we can't just dump him in the gutter like grandma's ashes.
Ashes? Ew. What is that?
That's so dark.
Like grandma's ashes.
That's so funny. I had two more things I want to talk about in this episode. One, I think Cylon and Garfunkel is hilarious. They're just singing Simon and Garfunkel, but it's like a robot noise going parsley, sage, rosemary. Yeah. Did you notice how smooth the animation for Bender's dance sequence is when he finally starts moving again?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It's really great.
Yeah. It feels so much smoother and more fluid than most of the other animation in the show. It looks really nice.
Definitely.
All right, you got any other thoughts about Bendin in the Wind?
Nah, it's a really good one. I really like this one.
Good one. Really funny one. Yeah, again, not quite a I guess there's some character analysis there within Bender that you can dive into in terms of, wanting to be remembered and a folk singer and all that stuff. But mostly just a funny episode with a great guest star. Good premise. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Then we get to 314. Time keeps on slipping. This is the one where the professor harvests chronotons to build super mutants that can beat the Globetrotters at basketball, but it causes time to start skipping. What a ridiculous premise.
Right.
It's like very Space Jam. Like it needs to beat a super team.
I caught super Space Jam flashbacks when all the little babies were like growing and shit, and like it's literally Space Jam at that point. Like,
yep. I like how much sillier it is though, because obviously in Space Jam they're stealing the abilities of the best basketball players out there, and this is just like I'm just going to make super mutants. And like one of them has a cannon in their chest and one of them is just a spider person. It's like, it starts off normal, like jacked,
and that's
tall,
the one that Amy
cannon.
speaks to.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Hey,
she's into this. Yeah. That's so funny. I really, really love this episode. I think it's really funny. I think it really does a great job with that like kind of emotional ending. Another good Bender one's like Bender wants to be a globetrotter. Bender wants to be famous. He wants to perform on a stage. So bad.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the first time they ever did anything time travel related in the show. They like very pointedly decided we weren't going to do time travel for at least for the first few seasons. Like right when they started, they're like, no time travel. But I like that this first foray into it was not a time travel story. Like they changed it up. It's like the time skips present different problems than time travel would present. That's cool. I think it's a really cool idea sci-fi wise, even though there are some inconsistencies in the episode with how the time skips work. I don't know if you noticed that.
Is it because when Professor's like, when he's breaking it down, he's like, I don't know, about Wednesday it'll be August or something like that. Like that long run of stuff he says. And then like I guess, time skips immediately after that. So like the next day.
The thing that I noticed that was weird about it was that the way they described how the time skips work was that while the time skips happen, everyone behaves how they normally would have, but they don't remember it. But one of the first time skip gags at the end of the first act is when basically, or maybe the second act, it's the end of an act. They're at the Globetrotter game and the guy says, the circus is in town tomorrow. And then they skip forward and the circus is there, which is a really funny sight gag, but none of our characters should have been there. They should have gone about their day normally and been somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think but also like the Futurama writers are smart. They definitely knew that and decided it was better to do the joke than it was to adhere to the rules. Which I think that's kind of a thing they have to weigh often in this show is like, all right, do we really strictly adhere to these sci-fi rules we set up or do we go for the funny moment? Yeah. How do you feel overall about Time Keeps on Slipping?
So I think I like this one, but I think the sum of its parts is probably a little funnier than like what it actually is. But it still does have like a lot of really great gags. I really like one of my favorite gags in the whole show is when they're talking about the pop star that's on the rise and then it ends with found dead in her bathtub.
Oh, that's so like, sad. Yeah, it goes through her whole life and career on this. It's pretty fucked up.
And Bubblegum, this is the second time somebody says honkies in the show. He says honkies. He calls them honkies.
Honky meter. Cue the honky meter. 2. We're at 2.
After Futurama's over, it's gonna stay at 2.
There's gonna be 2. There's gonna be no more. Yeah,
I don't know what other show does this, but they keep doing it, and it's really funny.
That's so funny.
But yeah, I think this episode is fun. I think it's funny. And I love the Globetrotters being just they just kind of show up as like, hey, I just want to play basketball. and they're all really smart. They all know like Bubblegum, he like knows like he can play off the professor and they like
they're all like physicists.
It's rad. I love it. It's really good.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things they did with the Globetrotters is like, not only do they bring them in to be like the first act, like foil, but they keep them there as like to help solve the problem scientifically. It's just like a fun subversion of what you would expect. And also like they bring them back later in the show to do like physics with the professor too. Like they're pretty heavy in Bender's Big Score and Prisoner of Benda. It's like it's a really fun recurring thing that like, oh, the professor needs help with like math and physics. He calls the Globetrotters. It's pretty great. I really, really like this episode. I think the time skips are just such a cool sci-fi premise. I think it's a really good idea. I also think it just really it gets me with that ending every time. I think that ending's so good. And then that's like that's a fun conflict that like, oh my God, somewhere in this time skip, Fry did what he hasn't been able to do. He won over Leela and they can't remember it. Neither of them can remember it. So like, obviously Leela is not going to just like be like, yeah, it's fine. We're like, assume everything's fine. You know, she is, she doesn't remember what happened. So why would she feel differently? I think also how quickly that plays out is so funny where like, she's like, I'm never going to be with you. Then they're getting married and then bam, they're getting divorced. And it's so fast.
And they're just splitting up China. It's like football China.
It's like, yeah, it's the AFC and the NFC helmets on the China. That's what they're splitting up. I also think the ending is really great. I like that Fry chose to keep that to himself. Like he knew that he had done something to win her over. He saw it. She didn't see it. And he just said nothing, you know, like he knows what he did. That's a hard thing to figure out. Like, it's like, oh, I moved the, you know, how does he explain that to her? He's going to explain it to her. I think it works really well as this kind of like sad emotional moment that Fry has with himself. And then how did they make the Globetrotters whistle so sad? How did they do that? Because it just ends with the slow Globetrotters whistle. And now all of a sudden, like, I hear the Globetrotters whistle and I'm like, why am I crying? What the hell? Oh, man. Good one. This is a good one. All right, we got to keep moving. This is such a long season. This is such a long season. We won't have that many more shows that have seasons this long until we get to The Simpsons and Family Guy and most Fox ones. But you know, 315 is I Dated a Robot. Fry uses Napster to download a robot duplicate of Lucy Liu into a robot, like her personality into a robot. How do you feel about the I Dated a Robot? What do you think about this one?
So I like this one. I do. I think it's really fun. I think it's like, it's pretty funny. I don't know how I feel about the metaphor. Cause they're kind of doing like a, like I guess Bender's technically supposed to be racist in this. Like the mixed races can't date, like that kind of thing.
Right.
I think that's what they're trying to do.
Which weirdly does come up when they in the first revival season on Comedy Central. There's a whole episode about like the right for humans and robots to be together. That's a whole episode premise later in the show. And Bender is one of the focuses of that episode. So it's interesting that he kind of came around on that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Cause I see where they were trying to go with it. But like, I felt like this was like a weird scenario to try to explore that in, because like, no matter which way you spin it, what Fry's doing is very creepy and wrong. And, so you can't try to teach Bender a lesson through that. Cause it's pretty bad. I don't know. It's really, that's what was going through my head while watching it. But if you kind of ignore all that stuff, it still is pretty fun. I like, I am obsessed when cartoons reference All in the Family. And Bender says, will you stifle yourself, meatbag? And he has the cigar and he's sitting in a chair, which is exactly what Archie Bunker's catchphrase was, like, stifle, will you stifle yourself? It's pretty much just shut up.
Right.
And I saw this episode today, and I've been saying it all day. Like in my group chats, like I've been attacking my homies like Steve and Blake. I'm like, well, you guys just stifle. I changed the group chat name to Stifle Yourself. Like I've been going crazy all day.
That's so
but
funny.
I don't know. I think I like this one.
I think I feel like I totally understand your like issue with like what is the metaphor and lesson they're going for here. And I think the reason that it feels that way is because I don't think the episode was engineered from the perspective of let's serve that lesson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think this stemmed from Napster being a thing. And like, do you know what Napster? Yeah. I'm an old man. I know about Napster. Napster, like, for our listeners who might not know, was one of the first peer-to-peer downloading file services where people would pirate music. And so so that's basically where this episode premise comes from, is they kind of futurized the idea of pirating something. So Napster in this episode, Nappster, in real life was Napster. It was just software that you could download music in the late 90s, early 2000s. And in this, it's like, well, let's futurize it by making it download personalities of celebrities. We're like amping that up. We're exaggerating it to a new degree. We're doing like that. That feels like what this episode stemmed from for me. And I think they kind of retroactively tried to fit some of these other ideas into it based on that parody, right? Like that's kind of why to me it maybe feels like I could be off base. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but to me that's what feels like it happened. It feels like let's parody Napster in a future way, and then when they tried to fit all of these other ideas into it, they don't quite fit because it's not really a natural thing to do. Like you're bringing in Bender being a robot and how much of an issue he has with that. So I think there's some really fun stuff in this episode. I do think it's weird. Like I feel like the revival seasons of Futurama get a little topical. They start to parody things that happen. And it's funny, like, but that was happening back here too. And it almost feels like the further you're removed from the topical stuff, the less topical they feel. Like when I go back and watch the revival seasons, like, and I watch the episode Attack of the Killer App, I'm not as mad anymore about the iPhone parody. I'm mad about most of the other stuff in that episode, but the iPhone parody, because it's not a good episode, unfortunately. But the iPhone thing is like all of a sudden, like at the time I was like, oh, they're just doing the iPhone thing now. And now I watch it, I'm like, well, yeah, it's just an iPhone thing. No big deal. Like it doesn't matter. Like at the time it was so current that I was just like, oh, I can't believe they're doing an iPhone thing. And it's interesting how time sort of makes the things that feel topical, they don't feel topical anymore, because time has passed. I think this is an interesting example of that, because I don't think anyone thinks of this episode as topical, even though it totally was written because Napster was a thing.
Futurama is weird because it's a show about the future, but it's still written at certain periods, so they still, some things that like you couldn't predict going obsolete like are still around. They have a VCR in this episode, right? And that was really bizarre.
I mean, even just like pens and paper, like I don't think they're gonna have pens and paper in the year 3000,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have that Bender says that Fry has metal fever, which is like, that's an insane race joke. It's a really insane race joke. That one's rough. Also, apparently, there's only 2 parallel universes.
Right, in this one.
Right.
And then later we get to a different parallel universe episode. But I love the joke that there's only one other one and they just wear cowboy outfits. That's super funny. Yeah. Oh man. All right, let's move on. Oh, do you got more?
Yeah, one last thing is that when the Lucy Liu robot dies, it's like really sincere and sad out of nowhere. I think that's the part that like makes the episode for me, because they take it super seriously, and there's like no gags. Like it's rough.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, they do like the really heartfelt Lucy Liu bot death, which is yeah, the whole episode is so silly to begin with that it's like kind of a weird angle.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to 316, a Leela of her own, which we were talking about the other day because we were looking through an old website that I used to go to a lot called gotfuturama.com. And as we've determined, this is one of the least liked seasons by the fans of Futurama on that website, at least.
Episode,
this is the one where
not season.
Oh, sorry. Least liked episodes of Futurama. Leela becomes a professional Blurnsball player, but it's only as a gimmick because she beans every batter she goes up against. Yeah. I mean, it's weird. Like, doing a baseball story in Futurama feels kind of weird. Like, I guess to begin with, like, you know, Blurnsball, baseball. The first thing I noticed in this episode is that the professor is pretty racist at the beginning of this thing, where he's just like hating on the new alien neighbors who moved in next door and like refuses to say hi to them. It's weird. Like, he's an old man, and yeah, he's like, but it's like, this is the first time I feel like we've seen him just be like really racist. It's kind of just like, I won't even talk to them. Pretty messed up. But yeah, I don't know. Like, in a way, I think there's some funny stuff in this episode. I don't entirely disagree with the consensus, though. It's not one of my favorites. I'd say it's lower on my list, but not the worst of the run by any means. But I don't know. I don't know. I when I think about this episode, I remember Leela hitting people with the Blurnsball. And I can't remember. I don't think of much else about it. You know, it's like it doesn't stick in my mind that much. What do you like about this one?
So I really like this one. Like, I think I like it more than I did when I was a kid.
Nice.
Because I think one thing I noticed about this season and in doing my ranking is that, like, the ones that I really like are the ones that have a lot to say. And this one has a lot to say. And I think it's just because I resonate with it a lot of what it's trying to say, right? Because Leela is very excited because she gets to be the first female Blurnsball player, which I'll just kind of stop it here. The fact that it's 3002 and she is literally the first one is kind of nuts. But she's really excited about that. But in the practice of how she's doing it, she faces scrutiny from other women because she's bad at it, and because of how bad she is, she's making a mockery of just like other women that want to play the sport. And it's really interesting what Leela goes through, having to be sort of representation that she didn't ask to be. You know what I mean? And she struggles with that because Leela can want to be good for herself, right? Like, but now she has to be good for all the women because no matter what she does, she is the first one. So this is the standard of how women play Blurnsball now. And I identify with that a lot because and just in doing the videos, and obviously I'm not the only Black person that does the cartoon videos, right? But for a lot of people, I'm the only one that they know. So I carry a responsibility that I didn't even ask for. So I really identify with what they're trying to say here with Leela. And I really do appreciate it. And I don't know, I think because it's kind of hidden in all of the baseball stuff and all of the Blurnsball stuff, and like kind of barely even operating like an episode of Futurama. Like, I think that's kind of why, like, it's not really seen like that. But that was kind of the first stuff that I picked up on, was all of that. And I was like, oh, I really like this.
Yeah.
Like, I really like what they're going for here.
I really appreciate that perspective. Yeah, that's like, I mean, that's also just something you've always been good at with your content, is like taking something and being like, here's how and why I personally relate to it. And I feel like you've opened my eyes to a lot of media to like look at it different ways than I would have previously. And it's kind of blowing my mind for you to so quickly do that with like an episode of a show I've watched 700 times. I've been like, yeah, I don't care about this episode. And then the moment you talk about it like that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's really good.
To be fair, you've done that with multiple episodes this whole time we've been doing this.
Right. Yeah, that's cool, man. I like that. I really like that perspective. You gotta make some Futurama videos.
Yeah,
I know I've cornered the market. Yeah.
This might actually be the one. I'm not even gonna lie, this might be the one. I do, and it does a lot of other things I really like too. I like that the roaches, I just realized that they're roaches because they're from New York. I didn't realize that. But I realized that I think the executive guy, the one that runs the boxing ring, he might be like bad luck to Futurama fans, because a lot of fans don't like this episode and he's in this one, and a lot of them don't like the boxing one either, and he's in that one. And when I saw him again, I was like, oh shit.
That might also be Tom Kenny. I think it is.
That would make sense.
Yeah. Makes sense. He is a funny character. He's just, it's interestingly, he seems to be in episodes that aren't as beloved, I guess. Yeah, that's interesting.
I have Hank Aaron. Rest in peace to Hank Aaron.
That's right. Just happened. Yeah.
It's really cool. I love that Hank Aaron's descendant has the exact same voice. Hank Aaron does nothing different to his voice. It's just his descendant, and I thought that was really cool.
I think my favorite joke in this episode was talking, the coach is talking to Leela and says, "You've been training with Hank Aaron, or you've been training with the Hank Aaron?" She goes, "I've been training with a Hank Aaron." That's a good
my
gag.
Favorite. The gag I love is when they're in the locker room and like they have all the bars, and then Bender hits the switch and they all turn off, and then the guy just everybody just kind of covers the guy. I win. That's
really good. Also, I like that's such a funny future technology, like a live sensor bar. It's really goofy. All right. You got anything else before we move on?
Nah, that's it. I think that's all I got for this one. This one's really
all right. All right, let's we're on 317. God, what a long season.
Almost there.
A Pharaoh to remember. Bender becomes the pharaoh of a planet that is based in society on ancient Egypt. So I've talked about this one a bit in some of my videos, actually specifically one of my Bender videos. I really do like the way that this is one that really brings Bender's insecurities and like fear of not being remembered and like it to the forefront of his story. I don't think I care for the Egyptian parody thing.
Okay.
I don't know, man. I know it's the future. You can do anything, but like that sometimes feels lazy to me when they're just like, we just went to a planet that's ancient Egypt. You know what I mean?
Actually,
and I know they like.
I really agree with you.
Okay, cool.
I really agree with you.
I know it's like, and it's also a pretty easy thing to explain away, especially with like ancient alien theories and shit like that. Like you can at least explain it away in fun ways, but as the focus of an episode, like seeing the crew in Egypt doesn't interest me that much, you know?
Yeah, same. I definitely agree.
But like I said, the like focus on Bender's insecurities and the whole like it's really a thing that we've been talking about for the whole run of this show. It's like a thing that they really focus on is like Bender is insecure, and this is once again like Bender wants to be known and remembered no matter what, even when he is like an Egyptian slave. He wants to be known as the best, most hardworking one. Like that's how hard he goes. And like no matter what he's doing in this situation, he's like, you got to remember me. I'm the best one. Yeah. There's one thing in this episode that I hate, and it is the Elton John parody. I think the Elton John, I do like that it ended with them shoving him into the tomb. But like normally I feel like the show nails its songs and its parodies and stuff like that. And it's like when it does the Benny and the Jets, like I think it's Bender and so his stupid. Pets. Yeah, it's so dumb. It made me angry. It made me really angry. Yeah. You got any more thoughts on A Pharaoh to Remember?
Yeah, this one is on my lower end of them. I do, like you said, I do think that the Egyptian stuff is like really played out. And they do some things that I really like the Australian guy from How Hermes requisitioned his groove back. he's there, the Australian slave guy. He's like lugging the thing around. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. The funeral is kind of fascinating to watch because like when Fry and Professor speak, it kind of pacifies Bender, right? Like Fry says his favorite cause of death, and Professor says it was some very specific statistic about like the way Bender was put together, and those two things really do pacify. It's not even it's really just until Hermes gets in front and starts talking about how good Bender was at his job that he doesn't like that. And I don't know if that's Bender feeling like anybody can be good at a job, so that doesn't make him special or something like that. But it's just kind of downward after that.
I think I think what Professor said is something that like he basically talks about the metal that makes up the bending unit, and that Bender has like a small fraction of a percentage nickel impurity. So like part of his metal that he's made up of is different than every other bending unit. And that in itself is like really speaking to Bender's like insecurities. Is like Bender wants to stand out. He wants to be different. He wants to be known for something. And like even as something as small as a fraction of a percentage nickel impurity in the metal he's made out of, that's like enough for him to be like, yeah, that's right. I'm different and unique. That is pretty interesting. It is funny how it always comes back to that. It just always comes back to Bender wanting to be unique and different.
You've opened my eyes with that. Definitely. I think Fry says that the hours of being a slave suck. I thought that was pretty funny. And he so also stupid. Says, hey, this is like the ancient Egypt of my time, which is really stupid.
Yeah.
The ancient Egypt
of my time. Yeah. It's pretty good.
That's all I got for this one.
That's all I got for this one too. So let's move on to Anthology of Interest II, the second anthology episode, the What If Machine, number 2. So what was the first one? Is the first one Bender wants to be human?
It starts with the pump fake, because the first one he's kind of like he acts like he's gonna ask that, but then he's like, what if I was a giant, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. So they actually do it this time. I do like the way he asks it in this, right? He says we robots don't have emotions, and sometimes that makes me very sad. That's why he wants to know what it's like to be a human. That's a really funny one. Also pretty gross in a lot of ways, but I really like the montages. I can't remember the song. What's that song? That he's like dancing to all night.
But it's pretty funny. It's really funny. Why won't they let him eat on the toilet. I wrote that with like a couple. He tries to eat the nachos on the toilet and he just grabs him. We're like, no, stop.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's so funny, like how the moment he becomes a human, he just wants to indulge in every sense that he can, you know. Like to the point where he can't even take a break between shoveling hot dogs in his mouth and making out with someone. Like he's
right.
like, nah. Yeah.
The animation is really funny on that, by the way. Like they like, I don't know what they do. They like turn down the frame rate or something. So it's really funny. I like that the segment ends with you watched it, you can't unwatch it.
That's great. I also think it's funny to note that both what if segments that Bender asks, what if I was different than I am now, end in his tragic death. The first one, he's a giant robot. Yeah. And in the first one, I love his speech where he's just like, who's the real 500-foot monster here? Not I.
Not I.
And in this one, he's like pleading with them to try out his lifestyle, even though he is like literally a ball of fat. He is just like, he is like, it is like he cannot move. He has to be rolled really into the room. Yeah. But then I also like that the fat.
He goes missing for a week, and then they're like, we can't find him, and then they like, we found him.
Yeah.
Where did he go?
Where did they find him?
Exactly.
I also love the end when they're like, they've been partying for all the hours and they're like, he's dead. He's like, but he just said woo. It's just the air escaping from his fat flabs. And then as they're rolling him out of the room, it's woo. It's pretty good. The second one is a pretty fun classic one. It's what if life was more like a video game? And it's obviously like just a bunch of video game parodies, you know. It's like, let's bring video game ideas into the real world, but like it's not like overly trying to do the like what if world. It's, to me, it doesn't feel like what if life was a video game. It's like, what if all the video games you knew were a part of life? You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think there's some really fun stuff in here. I like the Planet Nintendo 64 and like, and I like that they're just all the video game characters coming down. I like Fry getting prepared and he's like a full bottle of Shasta and my All Rush mixtape. He's like ready to play Space Invaders. I loved this one as a kid. Getting older, like the novelty of the video game stuff isn't like as fun as it used to be, but I still think this is a really fun little anthology story.
Yeah, when watching it, it was again, we talked about just like Futurama being a show made in the past, taking place in the future, and like hearing Fry ask what if life was like a video game, and they just kind of parody a bunch of stuff from the 80s and 90s. It's like, oh yeah, this is when this was made.
Right.
Video games are so different now. It's kind of like, I don't know, you ever played a Simpsons game?
Yeah.
It's like that. They do.
And which one? The Simpsons movie game? I played.
Oh, yeah, the movie game.
I played Road Rage and Hit and Run. I never played the movie game though.
Okay, so in the Simpsons game, the one based on the, well, not based on the film, but released at the same time.
That came out when the game. Yeah, I remember when it came out. Yeah.
They do something like this. There's a couple levels like, because the whole game is just the Simpsons know they're in a video game. Let's explore every video game trope. So there's like, there's like Grand Theft Itchy with Marge, and there's like Zelda parodies. There's a ton of stuff like that, and they do. The game is kind of an extension of this segment almost. It's kind of really reminiscent of it. They do a lot of.
I want to play that stuff. Was
that
was
good.
Like
I've played through it a couple times.
Ago, right? I can probably get it on PS3. Play it on there
for sure. Yeah.
The last anthology in this one is Leela asking if she found where she really belongs, but then she gets knocked out and actually just dreams a Wizard of Oz parody,
which is brilliant.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff in the Wizard of Oz parody. It's really funny.
I think it's just brilliant that they knocked her out, because she probably would have found out that she was a mutant. Maybe.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because the machine would have probably knew. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. I didn't think about that. That is smart.
Maybe
that's why they did that.
Yeah.
I do think it's a pretty fun Wizard of Oz parody too. It's hard to do the whole Wizard of Oz in a 10-minute sequence. But obviously, like, we know the Simpsons are pretty good at these parodies in their Treehouse of Horror stuff. You know, it's like, I know the whole plot of The Shining because of the Simpsons. But there's some pretty good. It's so good. One of the best ever. There are really some like good, smart character parallels though. Like, it's really like Mom is obviously a great wicked witch, you know? Was Scruffy the first witch though? Was it Scruffy or who was it first?
I think so.
Which is pretty funny. And then, yeah, obviously Bender's a Tin Man. Fry has no brain. Like Zoidberg, and then Zoidberg shows up in like a cab, right? He's like, I'm the third one.
They pick them up, but they don't pick Zoidberg up. So Zoidberg, when he shows up, they're like, "Why did you drag us here?" And Zoidberg's just like, "And why did I have to take a cab?" I love when they go to see the professor, and Zoidberg wants courage, and the professor just gives him a gun. I wrote a gun with 7 exclamation points and 3 money bag emojis. So, I freaked out when I saw the gun.
So fucking funny.
They do Wizard of Oz on Phineas. They do it on Phineas and Ferb too. There's a whole episode. It's one of my favorite ones of that whole show. And their spin on it is that, like, the character that's supposed to want courage, he's kind of indifferent. He just kind of goes along. He says, I don't want anything. I'm good. Like, I don't want nothing. And then when they get to the wizard, they just kind of give him a sandwich. And he's like, oh, I guess I did want that. I guess I was kind of hungry. And I don't know why, but I was just kind of thinking about that the whole time. So when I saw the gun, I freaked out.
Yeah.
And that's what made me laugh about it.
It is funny. Like, it's a funny bit. Like, yeah, you don't need to be courageous if you're packing heat. You're fine. I also like seeing the professor with a giant head. That's funny. It's just funny visually. Yeah. All right, we should probably keep moving. We still got like 4 more to talk about. And we got some good ones here coming up. Roswell That Ends Well. The crew is launched back in time and discovers that the infamous Roswell UFO crash was actually them. This was their first Emmy Award for Outstanding Animated Series. They won an Emmy for this, which feels, and it, like, even though this isn't my favorite episode of the season, this feels like such an Emmy winner. Like, the premise is so accessible to people who haven't seen the show, and so like, that makes so much sense to me that this episode won an Emmy.
And it's a genius premise. Like, it really is. It really is. Like, it's tailor-made for the show. It's really genius.
Yeah, and it's really the first time, other than like Luck in the Fryrish, we got some flashbacks, but this is the first time they go to the past. Like, this is the first time we ever see anything really in the past for Futurama. And like, that fish out of water story is really funny. I just did a video about time travel in Futurama, and like, my favorite bits are the professor and Leela like standing out like a sore thumb in 1947 Roswell. The professor's just wearing like a weird flamboyant pimp outfit, basically.
Right.
Like, he's just got like the fake hat and everything. And then Leela, and my favorite line is that she's just like, oh, Fry's from around this time. I'll talk like him. yo, Holmes. It's so stupid. It's so funny. But like that idea that like, oh yeah, 1947 is close to 1999 in relation to how far in the future we exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, obviously, no. Yeah, it's so funny. And then all of the like weird, all of the stuff with Enos is pretty funny too. Like the sergeant constantly yelling Enos and making him do shit for him is pretty funny.
He's dead. Sorry.
This kind of feels in a way like Bender's self-sabotage with his relationship. This is Fry self-sabotaging his grandfather's existence. Yeah. He's like overly worried about him continuing to survive and then just kills him in the process, which is pretty sad.
So you ever just kind of think that you're just kind of going with girls because you're supposed to?
Yeah.
What?
I like that joke too because it works so good in context. Because like that's easily a joke that people could like watch and misconstrue as like a homophobic joke, but it literally Fry's existence is at stake. His existence is at stake, and so he's like, no, I've never thought that. You can't. And yeah, it's so funny. And then obviously the big event of the episode, Fry thinking he's got it all figured out. You can't be my real grandmother, and then sleeps with his grandmother.
I know how you feel. My grandfather just died.
That's so funny. Yeah. Oh my God. I think you said my grandfather recently died.
Yeah.
I don't know why that distinction of like recently is funnier. It's the
and then it's like when they wake up the next morning, she's like instantly old. Like she's
like, come
I'm
back to bed.
I'm sorry.
Oh man. It's funny. It's also interesting how like, I don't know, the professor and Leela are disgusted in the moment. I'm shocked that Leela didn't consider this more closely for the rest of the run of the show. Scenario. I think the professor brings it up one time. Fry brings it up one time, but like other than that, it's ignored. And I'm like, in context, maybe this was the biggest thing that Leela was like on the fence about when it came to being with Fry.
That would make sense to me because if these were actual people, I probably wouldn't stop bringing this up. Like, it's like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know. Maybe that's how strong their love is, man. Maybe she can look past that.
Yeah, for sure.
This episode definitely has something I wanted to ask you about. Because it's something I've thought about for years. So, but when they're about the time travel, the clock says 3002, and I've always mentally thought that Futurama, like, time actually passes. At least that's what I thought. But the only thing that kind of hinders that idea is that Hubert and Dwight don't age.
Don't really age, right?
Yeah, that's why it sucks that they added them.
I think it is. I think it is generally time passes. They just don't age up the kids. Kind of like, I guess, kind of what initially Simpsons was before they were just like, well, we can't keep this up. You know what I mean? Right. But you notice it with Dwight and Cupert, and then also the other ones you notice with it are the kids from the orphanarium who show up a lot over all the seasons of Futurama. Those kids from the orphanarium show up, and they're all the same kids, and they never age. But they do the main characters do canonically age. Like, that is part of it. I know there's an episode in season 4 where they like the episode where Teenage Mutant Leela's Hurdles, one of your favorite episodes. Where they all start to get younger, and like that, I believe there is like confirmation in later episodes of the characters' ages as though they have aged the number of years that have passed since the show started. So yeah, that is like, I guess it's just when it comes to the kids, they don't address it.
Okay.
Let me think. What else is there in this episode? The Harry Truman stuff's funny. Zoidberg being the alien that was taken is funny. That stuff's really good. Yeah, it's just a funny episode. It's funny, genius premise. The first real time they do time travel, and they kind of nail it. And also just like the way they time traveled is so stupid and funny. The supernova combines with Fry putting metal in a microwave. That's my favorite. That's my favorite kind of sci-fi comedy nonsense, where it's just like, this is not a real thing, but we're gonna come up with a scenario for why they traveled through time. Yeah. Great episode, really good one. Great title too. Roswell That Ends Well is a top-notch title.
It's really good.
All right, let's move on to 320. We got 3 more episodes to talk about. Unless you got more. You got more?
Nah, I'm good.
All right. 320 is Godfellas. Godfellas is the one where Bender is launched through space, and they can't catch up with him. And then he becomes a god, and then he meets God. I love this one. This is, to me, like an all-timer. Written by Ken Keeler, who's written a lot of classics. Once again, very heavy this season. Bender's search for meaning. Bender's search for something. I don't know. Like, it's so interesting to see Bender grapple with like his relationship to these new little tiny people who have now attached themselves to him in space, who he wasn't expecting. And so the first thing he does is ask for something selfish, which is like, I need booze to power properly. So you guys got to build me booze. And then the way he recognizes how the things that he needs and these people's like dropping everything in their lives to serve those things to Bender is making their lives worse. Like they are maimed and killed while creating the giant brewery. The booze attracts organized crime. The world is unsafe because of it. It's interesting. Like, it's a really interesting way to tackle this kind of a story. And I don't think it's quite as existential as like it could be, but I think it's interesting. Like, Bender's relationship to these people is interesting to me.
Yeah, I picked up on that too. Like what you just said about how it's like probably not as existential as it could be. That's what I was, because I hadn't seen this one in years, and it in my mind it was that's kind of how I saw it. I kind of saw it as this really big philosophical one.
Right.
And it definitely is philosophical. Like it's not saying that it's not, but I think I might have kind of overhyped it in my brain in that regard. But it still is really great. I love this one a lot. I love the final quote. I love when you've done the right thing, people won't think that you've done anything at all. I really like that. I like that. It's really good. And I like that it comes back because he says it to Bender. Well, God says it to Bender. Yeah. And then God says it again
to us
at the very end of the episode. Yeah, to us. And I didn't like when he repeated it, it was one of those things where like I thought about it for a couple of seconds after what we had just seen happen when Bender came back after meeting God and everything like that. And hearing him say it again, I was like, oh, I like that. Okay.
I also like, so like even when he starts floating through space, one of the first things he does is he carves something onto his chest plate that like shows that Bender was bigger and better than the humans. He's like, it's like a joke where he's just like, now they'll know what the score was when they discover me. But like, it actually weirdly represents that same thing. Like, Bender is insecure and he wants to be remembered. He wants to be remembered upon fondly or powerfully or like uniquely. He wants to stand out in some way, down to the point where he's like, well, if I'm going to die in space and someone finds me, like, I want them to think I was a big deal, and then that's kind of what his story with these people is about. Like, oh, he is a big deal. Can he handle that? And he obviously, it doesn't go great in the end. But I think at the end of the episode, what I think is really cool is that the reason he is saved and is because he left such a big impact on Fry. Philip, like Fry was searching for Bender endlessly. Like he lost his best friend. That's the meaningful relationship that Bender has made is his friendship with Fry. And so Fry's whole subplot is like, I need to find Bender at any cost. And the thing that finds him is that he just randomly by happenstance happens to like happen upon God on that big telescope. And what he says is, I wish I had Bender back. Just like, that's the only words he says that gets God's attention, and God sends Bender back. I like that. I don't know. I just like, I think at the end of the day, Bender is constantly searching for this like big, important meaning in his life. And it's kind of there. It's been there all along. It's that friendship he forged with Fry at the very first episode, you know? Yeah.
This one has I like Bender saying "Oh my God" to God.
Yeah,
like
that's
that
funny.
I also like. What is it?
I was gonna say I like how they visualize God. I think he's cool looking.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love that. I like Bonder. Is that you? Is that really you?
Bonder. It's me, Bonder. Also, the like really mean robot played by Phil Lamar named Helper, who's like, I heard your friend Bender's back. Really? No. I just thought you'd like that for a minute. So mean. Oh man.
And I like the psychic robot going, what am I, psychic?
That's great. Really good. Oh man, great episode. Really, that's a classic one. Really fun.
This one has really great character stuff with Bender. Really.
Yeah, no doubt. That's what it comes down to. Probably my favorite Bender episode, if I were to be honest about it. I think so. I'm trying to think of ones I might like more, but that's up there for sure. I don't know,
man. The honking.
Our favorite one.
That's the one.
What if Bender was Carr?
Oh, you can't even go.
Also written by Ken Keeler, interestingly. It's both written by the same guy.
Ken Keeler has a wild resume.
Those might have been the same writing directing combo. Actually, I think
that's
that was
funny.
Let me confirm that with my notes.
Was it?
It is Ken Keeler, Susie Dieter, writer director
Susie
combo.
Dieter.
Same one. It's pretty good. All right, we got two more to talk about. Next up,
let's do it.
Future Stock 321 Future Stock. Fry meets that guy who was frozen in the 1980s and then proceeds to take over Planet Express. They never say his name in the episode. He is that guy. And he takes over Planet Express using his sleazy 80s business tactics. This, I think, is a really underrated episode. I feel like people don't talk about it, but for my money, this is kind of like Insane in the Mainframe. I think it's one of the funniest. I laugh so much watching this episode. I just think that guy is a funny character. Like the idea of using these weird like 80s sleazy business tactics. And then the way he like takes Fry under his wing and turns Fry into like a very ineffective 80s guy. And I don't know. Like there's so many funny lines. Like even just at the beginning when they're having the beginning when they show the like Planet Express short film about like how great they're doing. And then as soon as it's over, everyone's like, yeah. And Hermes is like, we're doing terribly. It's like, but the short film is like, was a substantial loss for the company. It's just like everything's going terribly. And then you have the old lady character, like the old cat lady character, who's who keeps trying to like bring things up, and the professor has like some weird vendetta against her. Like,
yeah, he talks about like her apartment, like he he knows a lot about her.
Smells like cat pee. Yeah, he knows a lot about her. I think it's really funny. I think this is like an underrated comedic episode, especially like. Some of my favorite lines are like like, well, I mean, just like conceptually, I love him not knowing what Planet Express is and taking over the company and like running it like it doesn't matter. And like, I love that the commercial he made is just a parody of like the old Apple commercials, which is the weird like guy running into and with the package delivery. I love him teaching him all the like lingo. He's like, don't you worry about blank, let me worry about blank. And I don't know, this one makes me laugh a lot. Also, the bonitis is so stupid.
Yeah, and watching Buddy die is crazy. Like, I was mortified. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I don't know. This one is just one that like I don't think it says much character wise. I don't think it's a deep episode, but it's just one of those that I throw it on and it makes me laugh, and I feel like people don't talk about how funny it is enough.
I definitely agree. I definitely think this one is really funny. Like, I do think it's really funny. I think for me, my takeaway was that I really like the concept of someone else from Fry's time period also being frozen, and they kind of bond, right? Like, I really like that. I like that concept. But I feel like the story, I don't know. I feel like the story that should have accompanied it should have been something like Fry connecting with this person more than he's connecting with Bender and Leela, and that becomes a problem for them because maybe Fry spends a lot of time with them. Like, some kind of connection, some kind of bond that Fry could form with said person that could strengthen the bond between three of the characters. But again, this is a strong comedic one, right? This is just one that they wanted to do to be really comedic, so it doesn't have a lot of character stuff. But I think what it was that I just kind of saw this setup as a way to do like a lot more characters.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that, but that is, and it feels like now there's two opportunities that they could have done that with the cryonic woman as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously they went different directions, but that is a good premise. You know, they kind of did something like that in BoJack. Exactly that with Wanda in season 2. Yeah, Wanda wakes up from her coma, and she meets another guy who also was recently woken up from a coma, and that's like that's the struggle between BoJack and Wanda's newfound like chemistry is like, oh, she's got this other person she relates to more,
which is probably my favorite comedic line in the history of the show, where he's like, that's like saying me and Kanye West have something in common because we both breathe air constantly. I love that.
That's so good. Funny. Oh man, we'll cover BoJack at some point too. It's a good one.
So,
yeah. All right. Well, I guess there's not much else to say about Future Stock. I do really like. I think comedically, the way it's framed when Fry's giving that final speech, and you see the price of Planet really Express rise and fall. That's a great bit. That's really funny.
Oh, you know what's one thing about this episode that they do that I really do appreciate is that. So I think the only way I can make this point is, have you ever seen Straight Outta Compton?
No, I never watched it.
Okay, so but you know Eazy-E, right?
Yeah.
Eazy-E passed away of AIDS in the 90s. The way they articulated in the film is that at a certain point, Eazy-E is sick, and with every line of dialogue, he coughs. It's one of the worst things about the movie. But in this episode, Buddy brings up bonitis in the beginning, and he coughs one time to indicate that he still has it. Yep. So we know that he didn't get the cure yet. He went forward in time to get the cure, but just because he coughs once, we know that he didn't get it. They don't hammer it in like the Eazy-E thing. They don't make him cough the whole episode, and it comes back at the end, and you're not stuck going, wait, what? You know, because you got that cough in the beginning. I really like that.
I did think it was funny that like the sickness is bonitis and has to do with bones. So why does it make him cough? I know the coughing is the universal signifier of sick, but it's like this is a bone disease. Why are you coughing? But that's true. Yeah, they didn't hammer it. They didn't hammer it home. They set it up early and then brought it back at the very end. It works well.
Right.
All right, let's move on to the last episode of the season, the 30% Iron Chef. Bender trains to beat Elzar at an Iron Chef competition. This is again Bender wanting to do something that no other robot has ever done. It's Bender trying to do something unique. I think there's some pretty funny stuff in this episode. I feel like the Iron Chef parody thing leaned a little too much into the racial stereotypes.
I caught that too.
Yeah. But I don't know. There's some funny stuff. There's some really funny lines in it. I do like parody. I like the Iron Chef format, and I liked the panel of judges. I think there was a good array of judges on the panel. Loved Bubblegum Tate and Martha Stewart flirting. It's good stuff.
I wrote that too. I love that so much.
It's so good. And man, did they do a good job making Bender's food look terrible. It looks so gross. What do you think? How do you feel about this one?
This is another one that like is kind of like on my lower end. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
The stuff with Bubblegum and Martha Stewart was actually my favorite stuff in the episode.
It's so funny.
It might be the only time I laughed. I don't know, but I do really like. I loved all of that stuff. I thought that stuff was really great.
I think there's two parts of that make me laugh. And that's why that part stands out so much to me. And it's one, because the first thing Bubblegum says is, "I've never seen such powerful strokes of the ass," which is a great line. And then it leads into flirting because Martha Stewart says, "You've never seen mine," which is so funny. But just the phrase "powerful strokes of the ass" is so good. There's the other line that cracks me up though is the very end when he goes, "Let me test," like when the professor tests out the secret formula that Bender had for him, and he says, "It's just water, ordinary water." And then they keep going on about how it was just all about like confidence. And he goes, "Laced with nothing more than a few spoonfuls of LSD."
It's pretty good.
And a few spoonfuls is a lot of LSD.
And then they all won it too at the end. That's the end joke, is that they all won it.
It's pretty good.
I do think that the B story in the episode helps proves your thesis about Zoidberg being the only good person, because he is devastated that he cost Fry $10.
$10.
Yeah.
You're right.
And I think that is really sincere.
I wish I had put that in that Zoidberg video, but that is a funny thing. Like he frames Fry and Fry loses out on $10, and the guilt eats at him so horribly. I love that music sting they use every time he's like stressing out about it. It's so funny, so dramatic. But yeah, it's like I can't think of an episode where Zoidberg does something like malicious to someone except for this one, and it's such a tiny thing, and the whole premise is that it eats away at him entirely.
And nobody else cares as much as he does.
Nobody.
And to be fair, Fry doesn't do a very good job not incriminating himself. He doesn't.
Right.
He's like, "I don't have the wherewithal to deny this." Number one. Number two, when they point to him, he has a shirt on that says, "I hate bottles."
I hate bottles.
Which is the dumbest joke I've ever seen.
I also like... you made one fatal mistake, leaving this confession letter, and it's Zoidberg's stationery with his name on it. It's so funny.
Right. This episode
has.
I didn't realize. I don't know. Watching these in order is proving to me something I didn't realize. I didn't realize that Bender and Elzar have a really extensive relationship.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they
do. It's real. Like I remember Elzar, but I don't remember him like I don't remember it like this. Like I don't remember like they have this much history together. It's strictly just him and Bender.
Bender loves Elzar. He really looks up to him. This is kind of the culmination of all that, facing off against them in the Iron Chef competition.
Right.
Yeah, it is like it's interesting though. Like this is the season finale as written, and like we kind of pointed out last time, a lot of the production cycle season finales are underwhelming. They're not big episodes in any way. Fry and the Sperm Factory is probably the biggest. It is, and the other last season was Cryonic Woman, another really weird finale.
Yeah.
Like even if they had just done even Future Stock, the one episode before that ends on like thinking that the planet Express is going under, and at the very end it's not. Like that's a good finale vibe, you know?
Right.
It's interesting what they chose, with the orders they chose. But you know, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Still a great show. You know, when it comes to Futurama,
what we're gonna do. We're gonna air them out of order.
Yeah, we're gonna split these 4 seasons into 5 seasons. Cancel the show, bring it back as DVD movies. All right, let's move on to our rankings. That was the whole season, Futurama season 3. This is a long episode, folks. Thanks for sticking with us. This is the longest season of Futurama. We'll do our we tried to keep it concise. Yeah. There's so much to talk about. All right, let me start with my ranking. I'm going to start bottom to top.
Cool.
22, Where the Buggalo Roam. 21, The Route of All Evil. 20, A Leela of Her Own. 19, A Pharaoh to Remember. 18, I Dated a Robot. 17, That's Lobstertainment. 16, Bendless Love. 15, The Birdbot of Ice-Catraz. 14, The 30% Iron Chef. 13, The Cyberhouse Rules. 12, A Tale of Two Santas. 11, Amazon Women in the Mood. 10, Anthology of Interest II. 9, The Day the Earth Stood Stupid. 8, Bendin in the Wind. 7, Future Stock. 6, Insane in the Mainframe. 5, Roswell That Ends Well. 4, Godfellas. 3, Time Keeps on Slippin'. 2, Parasites Lost. And 1, Luck of the Fryrish. That is so many episodes to rank.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil it, but 2 of ours line up, and it's really funny which 2 line up.
All right, cool. Cool.
But I feel like if people are listening to the episode, they can probably predict which 2 line up.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel like I have a feeling. And I also obviously know there's a lot. I can tell a lot in my bottom half are probably higher for you and vice versa, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. So 22 with a Buggalo Roam. The 21, the 30% Iron Chef. 20, A Tale of Two Santas. 19, The Birdbot of Ice-Catraz. 18, The Root of All Evil. 17, A Pharaoh to Remember. 16, Future Stock. 15, Bendless Love. 14, Amazon Women in the Mood. 13, Anthology of Interest II. 12, The Saberhouse Rules. 11, I Dated a Robot. 10, Parasites Lost. 9, Time Keeps on Slipping. 8, A Leela of Her Own. 7, The Day the Earth Stood Stupid. 6, Godfellas. 5, Bendin in the Wind. 4, That's Lobstertainment. 3, Insane in the Mainframe. 2, Roswell That Ends Well. And 1, The Luck of the Fryrish.
We got top and bottom. I had a feeling.
It's all that matters.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love, it's I feel like I've been so, I definitely think because I've been so invested in the show for so long, it's hard for me to kick a lot of a lot of my preconceived opinions of a lot of these things. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like so many of these episodes I've loved for years. And there's sometimes stuff where I'm rewatching years later and I'm like, oh, that's better than I thought. Or, oh, that's worse than I thought. Right. But because I've watched the show so many damn times and even recently watched it so often, it's like, it's interesting to me to be watching it through your eyes and seeing so many ones that I wouldn't have expected to be higher on your list, like really make it up there. Like, I know you got a real connection to the last Lobstertainment. Like, that's obviously, we're like real disparity on our list. Mine's pretty low. Yours pretty high. And a Leela of her own, but you already explained that one really well. You know, that's like, you have a good, strong personal connection to that episode. To me, so I know maybe I overhyped the season for you by telling you I think it's the best season of the show. To me, my top 5 episodes in this season: Roswell That Ends Well, Godfellas, Time Keeps on Sleeping, Parasites Lost, and Luck of the Fryrish. Those are all episodes that I consider like S tier. Like, in my, I mean, and part of that is just like I've loved them for so long. But like, when I look through every season of Futurama, this is the only one with even close to that many episodes that I consider S tier. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So like, I do think rewatching the bottom half is some weak stuff. You know what I mean? Like, but for me, it's so top heavy. Like, those 5 episodes that I love so much are at the top. And then even the ones below it, Insane in the Mainframe, Future Stock, Bend in the Wind, Day the Earth Stood Stupid. I think those are all such good episodes. I love those all so much. So to me, like, the top half of season 3 in my ranking, I think is so strong, which is why this has always been my favorite. This is, I believe, my favorite season of Futurama.
I guess
season 4, though.
Definitely, I got it.
Yeah.
I understood it. And watching it, I definitely understood, because the high, and even in talking about it, right? Because the highs are really, really freaking high. Like, the highs of this season are really, really high. It's just, when you have so many, it gets difficult to match that high the whole time.
True.
Like, that's why
it is the longest season.
Right. And I think, I don't know, I think the fact that the first one is so dense because there's so little, that it's easy to like look at that season and go like, oh, this is a great season, because then you could barely point to one that's not bad, but like lesser, you know what I mean? And the lows in this are kind of the lowest in the show so far for me. Like the Western one, I wasn't feeling that one whatsoever.
It's rough,
like,
man.
You know what I mean?
It's not a good one.
Yeah. But I don't know. Like, the highs are really high. The Luck of the Fryrish is probably like forget being one of the best Futuramas. It gotta be like one of the best television episodes I've ever seen. Yeah. Like,
it's so good. There's
really good.
There is only one other Futurama episode that I think competes with it in my mind, and we'll get to it next season. I will not spoil which one it is. But it's just such a masterclass in storytelling. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite pieces of television of all time, for sure.
Yeah.
It represents everything I love about Futurama in one perfect package, and that's one of the reasons this is one of my favorite seasons. It's got that one. It's got that ep in it. So yeah.
I get that.
All right. Well, this has run pretty long, so we should probably wrap it up. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Cartoons That Curse. I promise they won't be this long next time, because the seasons are getting shorter. We need you to do all the rate, review, and subscribe stuff on your podcast platforms. That's going to help us out a lot. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, all that stuff.
Please.
And, please. I would really appreciate it. Give us, and when I say rate, review, give us 5 stars. That would be great. If you're going to rate below 5 stars, you don't have to. You don't have to do it.
Yeah, no. Yeah. You can keep that to yourself. You ever heard, you know what I mean? You don't got something nice to say, don't say it at all. Please don't say it at all. The algorithm, please. You're hurting us.
We would really appreciate it. We would really appreciate it. If you don't like us, then you just shut up about it. Just don't say anything.
Please.
Thanks, guys. We'll catch you guys on the next Cartoons That Curse. Peace.
Peace.